Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of Raising the Bar. And today is a special episode. I'm really honored to have this gentleman. His name's Jerry Marzinsky. He's a retired licensed psychotherapist with over 40 years of experience working with and studying the thought processes of psychotic and criminally insane patients in some of the most volatile psychiatric institutions in the nation. He was awarded the State of Arizona's Meritorious Service Award and the Pima College Apple Award for teaching abnormal psychology. His formal academic training comprises of a BA in psychology, a master's degree in counseling, and 2 years study in PhD psychology program. He is the co-author of An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower, and currently has a private practice in Arizona. Jerry, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Glad to be on.
Yeah, it's important stuff we're going to talk about, and for all the audience that are tuning in here, we're going to talk about the true cause of schizophrenia and how it's not actually what we're told it is in terms of a chemical imbalance, but actually how they're demonic entities that are kind of invading our personal body, our personal space. So it's going to be quite a gripping episode. Please hit the like button. Please share this video if you can. Really appreciate it. And Jerry, if you wouldn't mind, I know you've told your story many, many times, but it would really set the context and tone for the show. If you wouldn't mind telling the audience how, what led you to your conclusions with all this.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning, but the bottom line is that I've been studying these psychotic voices that schizophrenics hear for decades. Okay, I've spoken to hundreds of schizophrenics about them, and they gave me information in real time. So what I found is that they run a series of repeatable patterns. Okay, now, if they're running repeatable patterns, fixed repeatable patterns, all of these voices, then they can't be hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia says they are. You know, hallucinations don't run fixed repeatable patterns. These voices run those same patterns on the other side of the United States when I worked at the largest psychiatric hospital on the planet. They run them when I worked in all the hospitals here around Tucson. They run the same patterns with schizophrenics I'm speaking to all over the Western world. So if they're running patterns, they cannot be hallucinations. Those patterns are on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com for anyone who's interested. You can go to the articles section and pull them up. Okay. So that's the bottom line.
Mm.
They are not hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia has convinced the Western world they are with their propaganda. They have
Mm.
unlimited amounts of money to propagate whatever garbage they want to. They've not done a single study on these voices ever. And I can tell you from the entire time I've worked on the front lines in mental health in all these different kinds of institutions, I have never, ever seen a researcher on the front lines. They all come out of the universities. The universities have been taken over by uh, the Carnegie Foundation and the Rockefellers back in 1910.
The
They are
Flexner
they are
report is called, isn't it?
the
I think.
Flexner Report.
Yeah.
Yep, they bought off the U.S. Congress to make it a law that the only kind of medicine that can be taught in the United States was pharmaceutical medicine for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the public, for their own benefit, because they controlled the pharmacology companies, all that kind of stuff, and it's still in play today. You
Yeah.
know, so these drugs they don't for the most part don't cure anything. These antipsychotic drugs. I mean, they reduce the symptoms, you know, but if the person stops taking them, more than 90% of the time, these voices will reappear. Okay.
Right.
So, that's the conclusion of all the research I did. And how I came to that is a different story. Now, these voices they hear are entities. Okay. I didn't want to believe that.
Mm.
And I didn't believe it for decades. Um, until the evidence became so overwhelming, my denial system just fell apart. It just crashed. Uh, so this started off after I got off, even before I got out, I got into graduate school. Um, I remember one time in a clinical psychology or abnormal psychology course in undergraduate school, the professor assigned us a paper that a clinical psychologist wrote. Okay? And what it basically said was that if two crazy people met each other and they both had the same delusion, so if both of them felt they were uh, Biden, one of them would have to give way and change to some other delusion.
Mm.
And even as an undergraduate, before I'd ever met a schizophrenic, that didn't make any sense to me. And I had a deep distrust of uh, authority from a very young age. I mean, just a deep distrust. So when I heard that we didn't have any access to a clinical population.
Mm.
So that's one thing I hated about psychology. There was no way to check out what they were teaching you. Like if you go into engineering, you got the math, you got the labs, you got the, biology, you got the labs. You can go see the results for yourself. In
Mm.
psychology, the only results you could see were in experimental psychology, where you can run these different, reinforcement schemes and actually watch what happens. I mean, it would materialize before your eye. But with the rest of this stuff, there was no way to check it out. It's like, oh, just believe us. This is the truth,
Mm.
and that went on for, uh, 4 years until I got into the master's degree where they started teaching counseling and they had these different techniques and you can watch that. But even in the PhD program, there was no way to verify what they were doing, not as a student, you know. So there were no researchers on the front lines. I'd never seen one,
Yeah, so they
and
was
they
what you call a chemical imbalance, basically. That was their conclusion with it all.
well, that's what they said the cause was.
Mm.
That was created. It was a falsity. It was a lie created by Eli Lilly when they came out with Prozac. They needed some way to explain why their drug worked. And they went, well, it's a drug and it changes something chemical about the body. So the body must be chemically imbalanced for this to work. It was a lie when they put it out. They knew it. They put it out anyway. And then they started selling it to the establishment. The establishment started teaching it in the graduate schools. And so you got all these psychologists and psychiatrists coming out of school now being brainwashed, believing that there's a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Mm.
And it's been proved completely wrong. And they're still pushing it even today. Even though it's been proved wrong, they're still pushing it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
let me get back to the beginning because we're kind of in the middle of the story here. So I was talking about that professor that uh, ordered us to read that
Mm.
article that said if one crazy guy met another crazy guy, one guy would have to change his delusion. So fast forward about 10 years, I was working at Milledgeville State Hospital. It was the biggest state hospital at the time. It was the size of a small city. I remember when I first got there, these towering brick buildings with heavy steel grates on the windows, so these guys couldn't get out. And I remember shortly after I got there, I was walking through that hospital at night. It was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was 30 miles from the nearest city, and you could hear the howling of these crazy people just echo through the night. I mean, it was like it was an ocean of insanity. Um, So I was working on I was doing my rounds on the second floor of a psychiatric unit at that time, and one of my jobs was to keep track of the schizophrenics to make sure that they were taking their medicines and behaving and weren't getting out of control. And if they were getting out of control, to try to talk to them. If they weren't reasonable, then you had to turn them over to the psychiatrist who would drug them senseless. Okay, so there was a new guy showed up, and here he was talking to what appeared to be himself, and uh, I started creeping up on him to try to hear what he was saying.
Mm.
And what it was is like listening to a phone call, one half of a phone call. You could hear the person talking, but you couldn't hear the other person that was coming in. Okay, and what he was talking about was coherent. Now I'd heard this before. I mean, patients arguing with their voices, talking to their voices. And it was the same thing. It was like one side of a telephone conversation. But in college, they referred to these voices as hallucinations. So the whole time I was in undergraduate school, I thought that these voices were like word cabbage, or word salad, that they didn't make any sense.
Hmm.
But when I started hearing this, like they were one side of a telephone conversation, and they were talking to something I couldn't see, and those conversations were coherent, I started wondering about that. You know, so uh, I crept up on this guy. I was trying to listen to what the voices were saying and his responses to them, and he caught me. So he turns around and he catches me. So I told him, I said, "Hi, I'm Jerry. I'm the psych for this unit. I haven't seen you before. You know." Said, "Did you just get here?" He said, "Yeah, I got here just a few days ago." And I said, "Well, what's your name?" And he says, "I'm Jesus Christ." And I thought back and I looked him in the eye and I said, "No, you can't be Jesus Christ because I am." And I stood there kind of wondering, okay, what's he going to do? You
Hmm.
know, is he going to change that delusion because I'm saying I'm Jesus
Yeah.
Christ? This was the first chance I had to test it. You know, and he looks up and he thinks about it for a minute. Then he looks back at me, and he goes, "Okay, we can both be Jesus Christ." And he trotted off. I went, "Okay, what else did they lie to me about?" You know, so I was now kind of on guard, like how much more of what they taught me is garbage. And I started finding stuff very quickly. Is one of the first things I saw was they insisted that schizophrenia was due to a chemical imbalance in the brain.
Hmm.
So if you figure if it's a chemical imbalance, in order to treat it, you would need to know what was out of balance and by how much. You need some kind of baseline,
Hmm.
you know. And I'm watching psychiatrists, I was working closely with them. They would, we were shoulder to shoulder a lot of the time. And I'm watching what they do. They never, ever took any kind of a baseline. They would talk to the guy for 10 or 15 minutes. They'd go, "Okay, you got paranoid schizophrenia, and I'm going to prescribe this," out of their bag of medicines that
Hmm.
the pharmaceutical people would give them, you know, and there was no baseline. It was um, it was like a crapshoot. It was all subjective opinion,
Hmm.
you know? And they would just prescribe a drug just kind of subjectively, and then they'd watch what happened. If that didn't work well, they'd go to another drug, or they'd increase or decrease the amount. Oh. So I asked one time, um, what what do you use for a baseline? I mean, if there's a chemical imbalance, well, where's your baseline? How do you know what's out of balance or by how much? And he goes, "Oh, we don't worry about that. The big pharma takes care of that. They." And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was just like stunned. It's like letting the fox in the hen house and locking the door. You know, it's I, you know. So they have they have no test. They have no lab work. They have no blood work. They have no EEG, EK. They have no objective test to measure
Yeah.
what's out of balance or by how much. So how do they even know what they're treating? The truth is they don't.
Yeah.
And some of this has been debunked a long time ago. I mean, by psychiatrists all over the place, and by some very knowledgeable psychiatrists. Here's one of Jeffrey Lacrosse. He said there is not a single peer-reviewed article that can be accurately cited to directly support claims of serotonin deficiency in any mental disorder, while there are many articles that present counter evidence. They were blaming serotonin,
Mm.
a lack of serotonin. So what these antidepressants did, so basically what they're saying is all mental illness is caused by some chemical imbalance.
Mm.
And it's bullcrap. They don't have any evidence for it. And Ronald Pies, now this guy was he was a bigwig. He was an editor in chief emeritus of the Psychiatric Times. So Ronald Pye said the demise of the chemical imbalance theory in view of the mounting evidence against it after more than 20 years of being told that chemical imbalance in the brain causes mental illness, such as anxiety disorder and depression. The theory was finally put to rest when Dr. Pies, the editor-in-chief emeritus of the Psychiatric Times, stated in July 11th, 2010 issue of the Times, I don't believe there has ever been a knowledgeable, well-trained psychiatrist who could make such a preposterous claim that mental patients have a chemical imbalance, except perhaps to mock it. In truth, the chemical imbalance notion was always a kind of urban legend, never a theory seriously propounded by well-informed psychiatrists. Here's another one from a neuroscientist in the Harvard Medical School. The chemical imbalance theory is sort of a last century thinking. And that was neuroscientist Joseph Coyle of Harvard Medical School. Said the truth is that they don't have any idea of what the chemical imbalance or neurotransmitter imbalance of the brain is or even should be. So the next time a doctor tells you or a psychiatrist tells you that you have a chemical imbalance in their brain, ask them what the evidence is for that. They won't have any.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's all a bunch of crap. And I was wondering about that when I spoke to that psychiatrist. They don't have any tests. They don't have any objective tests to measure the chemical imbalance of the brain. They don't even know what the chemical balance of the brain should be. It's
Mm.
all fabricated. It's all a propaganda, and they're making a fortune off of this propaganda, and they got the whole Western world believing this crap,
Mm.
and they're still doing it.
They're still doing it. Yeah.
I pulled up an article a couple of weeks ago, and here they were going, oh, now they say it is believed that, or it is suspected that, schizophrenia is due to a chemical imbalance of the brain. They're doing this to sell their drugs. They're
Cool.
making $4.7 billion a year selling antipsychotic drugs that cure absolutely nothing. Okay, so that was one of the first things I saw. Um, is they were just drugging these people subjectively. And I watched how they used uh, the the ECT, the brain shock things
Yeah.
too. Um, they were using those. There were 3,000 a year being given at the state hospital I was working at. 3,000. The population there when I got there was somewhere around 10,000. So it was like a small city of crazy people,
Mm.
and you know, there were still attendants working there who had worked there before they were widely using psychiatric drugs. Now these phenothiazines are basically tranquilizers. You know,
Mm.
they could mass drug entire populations of of mentally ill people and keep them under control. That allowed them to reduce their staff, reduce their costs,
Yeah.
um, and it made the drug companies a lot of money. Right? Um, so that was the first fabrication I saw. Um, so I started asking people, staff, like, what, you know, why are these people crazy? And they were all, it was like, oh, it's a chemical imbalance of their brain.
Mm.
You know, only one or two psychiatrists said, no, we don't know what causes schizophrenia. All right, those were the honest ones. The mass majority of the psych nurses, the regular nurses, the psychologists, the counselors, all the rest of them believed that it was due to some kind of chemical imbalance, and that the only thing that could be done for it was to drug these people senseless. And at that time, back in the 70s, that really was the only thing that could be done for it, because you couldn't talk to these people, you couldn't reason with them.
Mm.
It was trying to counsel them was, for the most part, unless they had these drugs in them, were like trying to kill a rhinoceros with a BB gun. I mean, it was just useless. So um, I started asking staff, like, well, what are these voices telling them? And they would respond, well, they're just hallucinations. You know, you just don't pay any attention to them. They don't make any sense. None of them were the least bit curious about what these voices were telling these people. You know, and I'm like, nobody is curious about what these people are hearing. And you could tell that the voices were affecting their behavior. I mean, they'd hear voices and they'd do something stupid. They'd sabotage themselves. They'd get in trouble. They'd get into a fight. Um, but they were very hesitant to talk about those voices
Mm.
because there was really no positive benefit for them to do so. Right? Not only that, I found out later that the voices did not want them talking about them. So what happened when they were out in the community, they'd tell their friends, I'm hearing these voices and they're telling me horrible things. And their friends would freak out, oh, well, they're possessed. Stay away from them. They're weird. Something's wrong with them. So they'd lose their friends. Right?
Mm.
So then they'd tell their parents, and their parents would get all upset. They'd take them to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist would drug them with these powerful drugs, and they wouldn't be themselves anymore. They'd be like semi-zombies, and those drugs have horrible, horrible side effects. Um, so they didn't like that. And the voices didn't like being drugged either.
Mm.
So I found out, it took me 7 years before I found out why the voices, uh, how the voices worked with regard to the drugs. Um, what the voices, they had there's a horrible side effects. I mean, pages of horrible side effects that these drugs have. The voices would tell these patients that the psychiatrist was poisoning them, and they'd point to these horrible side effects as evidence that they were being poisoned. And in truth, they actually were being
Yeah, they were
poisoned.
right.
You know, these drugs are toxic. They cause permanent neurological brain damage with extended use. You
And the
know,
thoughts were getting worse, were they, with the drugs or the same?
no, with the drugs, it calms them down. Okay, so what the voices want to do, they want to keep them upset. They want to keep them as upset as possible. And I'll get into that for a while. I'm starting to lose
Sorry, yeah, I won't ask any
my
more till
my
I'll
timeline
leave you
there.
to yeah.
So one of the first things I saw was nobody knew what the voices were telling these people, and nobody cared.
Mm.
You know, so I was curious. And when I found out that none of the staff had the slightest idea what these things were saying, uh, I started asking these patients, and they were hesitant to say, because they didn't trust psych staff, because basically we were spies for psychiatry. If the guy was getting out of control, we would have to turn him into psychiatrists, and psychiatrists would drug him, or they'd give him a shock treatment. And those shock treatments were like medieval horrible. Um, the first one I saw, I almost fainted. That's how horrible it was. And I got a strong stomach.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely horrible. And the attendants were in charge of those for the most part. It wasn't the psychiatrist. The attendants would tell the psychiatrist, this guy's getting out of control. I
Mm.
think he needs a shock treatment. The psychiatrist would talk to him, and if the guy was overpowering his medicines, then they'd give him a shock treatment. And that would stun them.
Mm.
I mean, they would stay stunned for a week. They couldn't think straight. All their short-term memory would be gone. Um, and even there was one neurologist that said even one shock treatment, he could see the damage that done to the patient's brain. Okay, and they're still doing these things today. And there are people that they help. I mean, they drive away for some reason. The electricity drives away the voices for a short period of time. 2 or 3 days, something like that. Well. temporarily helps with depression. Uh, but for the most part, it doesn't cure anything, just like those medicines. And, you know, psychiatrists were getting beat up at the state hospital at a rate much higher than any other staff. You know, much higher than the psych nurses, much higher than the regular doctors, the regular nurses, the counselors, the psychologists. I never understood why that was until, you know, I was about to leave the state hospital and one gal told me that it was the voices that told her to get off her medications. All right, that the voices were telling her to get off the medications because they were poisoning her. Then at that moment, it clicked in. That's why psychiatrists are getting beat up all the time. Yeah, because the voices are telling them that they're poisoning the patient. So it was hard to get these guys to talk about their voices. And I didn't know back then that the voices themselves were demanding that they not tell anybody about them. I found that out years later also. So it took me a while to learn how to talk to them. And, uh, you know, they were real suspicious because, you know, psych staff were turning them into um, psychiatrists, and psychiatrists were drugging them, and they were telling psychiatrists, well, the voices are still there after you gave me the medicine. And the way they were treated is they get more of these drugs until they were almost slobbering, or they couldn't see straight, their vision was blurred, they were just walking around like drug zombies. I mean, it wasn't curing anything, it was just managing them, keeping them under control. um, you know, it would calm them down. And there were some where when they got the drugs, the voices disappeared. But if they stopped taking the drugs, they would come back. Okay. So they would say, okay, you need to stay on these drugs. And indeed, back in the 70s, that's the only thing they really had, that and the shock treatments that actually worked. Um, so when I started asking these people what the voices were telling them, I started getting bits and pieces of information. And then I would ask other schizophrenics, do your voices tell you these things? And they would say, yeah, they tell me those things. So it was like there was a crack in their defense thing, you know, and if you could tell them some things about the voices, I mean, they would go, well, this guy, at least he's trying to understand. He has some pieces, you know, and they would give me more. It was just like I'd get one piece at a time, you know, from over years it would took. So when I had enough of these pieces, when I got a new schizophrenic, I'd say, listen, tell me about these voices. This is what I know about them so far. And they would be blown away. They would go, nobody listens to us. You know, you're the only one that listens. And that was true. Nobody listens to them. They go, you're whacked out. You're crazy. You know, we're not going to spend any time listening to you. You know, all you're doing is talking garbage. So it was then that I found the first pattern that these voices run. Okay. And that was negativity. Virtually all of these voices were negative. They were consistently negative. You know, they were derogatory, they were insulting, they were abusive, they were destructive. Um, they would make fake like they were helpers for a short period of time, and then they would turn on these people and tell them to do horrible things. They would tell them to attack others. They'd tell them not to take their medications. And this was the same with all of them. So as soon as I found this out, I'd bring the others in and say, well, your voices are negative, aren't they? And they go, yeah, they sure are. One after another, until it was in the hundreds. They were all saying the same thing. The voices are consistently negative. They're awful. They say you're no good. You're ugly. You're stupid. Nobody loves you. Uh, you're every rotten thing that you could think of. These voices were telling them. Okay. Now, if they were a hallucination, they would be random. They'd be all over the place. They'd say good things. They'd say mediocre things. They'd say um, stuff that wasn't positive or negative. They'd say neutral stuff, or then they'd say negative things. They weren't. They didn't run that pattern. They were consistently negative. So the first thing that came to my mind was why aren't they random like all other hallucinations? And I've seen working at the state hospital, I've seen hallucinations. People that were medically hallucinating, right? They weren't like that. These things were consistently negative. The question was, what holds them onto a consistently negative pattern? Why aren't they random like all other hallucinations? What force holds them to that negative path? Right? So that was the first pattern that I saw. Right? The second one was when a patient come in and see some of the patients realized that these things were demons. So they tried to go to church, they tried to read the Bible, they
Mm.
and the voices would kick up and try to stop them, right? So I would started asking them questions about what happens when you go to church. What happens when you read the Bible?
Mm.
How do your voices react to that? Uh, and I would start asking dozens of them. There was no lack of supply of schizophrenics. I had all of them I wanted, you
Mm.
know. So when one told me something, I wouldn't believe it automatically. I'd go, well, that's interesting. Let's see if there's anything to it. And I'd start asking the other schizophrenics, does this happen with you?
Mm.
This is, and they would say yes or no. And sometimes it was like, no, it doesn't happen to me. And some, it would happen to some, it wouldn't happen to others. It wasn't consistent. These are the consistent patterns. So I started asking all the ones that were trying to fight, uh, that suspected these things were demons and that they were moving in the wrong direction. And they tried to go to church. They tried to read the Bible. They tried to recite some poems. And I found out that there were patterns to that too. If the voices were weak and they walked into a church, the voices would disappear. If they were moderate strength, they would kick up and get
Mm.
louder and try to drown out everything that the preacher was saying. And I would ask them, well, what are they saying about the preacher? And it was like, oh, he's a bum. He doesn't know anything. He's just faking. He's faking it. Look at what he's saying. It's stupid. Why are you wasting your time here? That kind of stuff. So they couldn't listen to what the preacher was saying. If they went in with strong voices, those strong ones would just drive them out.
Mm.
They would just pick up and they would run out of the church. Just just leave. Okay. So one guy came in one time and he said, when I repeat the 23rd Psalm, he said the voices react like worms thrown onto a hot frying pan. And I said, that's interesting, you know, based on what they were doing with the guy who went to church. So I started asking all these other schizophrenics, you know, uh, did you go to church? You read the Bible? Oh yeah, I tried to read the Bible. And what happens? This was interesting too, because this was a strange pattern. The voices would tell the ones that were trying to read the Bible, well, if you're going to read the Bible, you need to start from the beginning and read it from end to end. You know, you, you have to get it all. So what would happen is they'd start reading the Bible and they'd get to the place where this guy begat that guy, begot that guy, begot that guy, and it just goes on for pages of who begot who for pages and pages. And then they jump in, the voices jump in and say, why are you reading this crap? Does this make any sense to you? Why are you even reading this? This is garbage. Don't waste your time there. And then they'd say, Jesus couldn't even save himself. What makes you think he'd save you? You know, these are this isn't word cabbage. This isn't random garbage. You know, these things we're trying to break them away from anything spiritual or religious. And that so what I started doing is handing out the 23rd Psalm to other patients
Mhm.
and saying, when you hear the voices, read this and then come back and tell me what happens. There was always a negative reaction. It was never neutral. It was always a negative reaction. The voices hated it. Okay. So that was the second pattern. Okay. So
Mhm.
what happened at the state hospital was, since psychiatrists were getting beat up by these people, schizophrenics at such a rate, such a high rate, I mean, it didn't make any sense to me because for the most part, they were only spending between 15 and 20 minutes a week or every 2 weeks with these people, and all they'd ask them is how you doing on your meds. That's it. They didn't care about them as a person, what they were feeling, they weren't listening to them. All they wanted to know is, well, how are your meds working? You know, and if they say, well, I'm still hearing voices, they'd up the meds
Yeah.
until they'd up them until the guys were just drooling. They were just zombies. So the patients would lie to them. Oh yeah, the voices are gone.
Mm.
Oh, that's good. That's great. The medicines are working. You know, no, they weren't telling them the truth because they didn't want to get drugged again. You know,
Mm.
so psychiatrists were leery of these people to start with because of the assault rate. I mean, there was this place was an independent city. It had its own food factory. I mean, it would prepare meals for 10,000 people a day,
Mm.
patients. And there wasn't any at that time when I was working there. There wasn't any McDonald's or any fast food restaurants anywhere in the city. There was one mom and pop restaurant that we would go there as a reprieve from eating hospital food every once in a while. But for the most part, we ate in the staff part of the central kitchen, which gave slightly better quality food to the staff than it did to the inmates. But there was always times where we had this what we called it mystery meat.
Oof.
Now we had no idea what it was. It was like, but there was nothing else to eat, so we ate it. There
Mm.
was high starch stuff. Um, Most of us were young at that time, so we burned it off pretty quick. Um, but uh, that's where the grapevine was. There were no cell phones at that time. All they were the kind of
Mm.
dial-up phones. That's what there was. So the grapevine was the central kitchen. And it was at the central kitchen where you learned what was happening in all the different psych units around the complex. Yeah. And it was there that we learned about the different psychiatrists being beat up by these psych patients. And it was always psychiatrists, and before it was 7 years before I knew why. But when I first got there, I noticed this phenomena and it was perplexing. And this was like, and I hate puzzles,
Mm.
but this was intriguing,
Mm.
so it was like this giant puzzle that why are these guys crazy? You know, what is going on here? It was like, uh, and it was like getting one little piece at a time and then storing that little piece in a treasure chest in the
Yeah.
back of my mind. And the pieces themselves didn't make any sense, and all these lies and duplicities kept coming up like the chemical imbalance crap. You know,
Mm.
okay, big lie, but the whole system is based around that huge lie. The fact that the voices are hallucinations and that they're running patterns. If they run patterns, they can't be hallucinations. Another humongous, enormous, astronomical lie.
Mm.
Now, if you go to my website, you go to articles, you can see these patterns. Okay. And what they did is they started out, they have no idea, they still have no idea what causes schizophrenia, even today, and they're unwilling to look at this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So psychology and psychiatry are not spiritual. There was no spiritual anything in all the years I spent in undergraduate and graduate school. There was no mention of any kind of spiritual anything. So everything is worldly. The only uh, the cause of everything is worldly.
Yeah. It's Newtonian.
There is
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
yeah there is no spiritual anything.
Mm.
So they're closed off to that whole realm.
Mm.
They're closed off to what I'm telling you right now. That the cause of schizophrenia are these negative entities. You know, they that put thoughts in the person's mind, and what's so dangerous about them is we're all hit by them, but we believe that every thought that comes into our minds belongs to us, is ours. You know, that's far from true.
None of them.
You know, none of them, according to Emanuel Swedenborg, they either come in from heaven or hell.
Right.
Okay, the ones that come in from the good side, they don't talk in words; they talk in feelings and intuition.
Yeah.
Like That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But it's not words. It's like, your conscience telling you, hey, that's the wrong thing to do. Don't do that. Don't abuse people. Don't, treat other people like you want to be treated. That's coming in from the good side. The bad ones, they speak in words.
Mm.
So what they do is they inject thoughts into your mind that aren't your thoughts. And these thoughts are consistently negative. Sherry Sweeney, who's the co-author of our book, The Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, she heard voices at one time. She said that every negative thought about yourself or anybody else that comes into your mind does not belong to you. It
Mm.
comes in from the voices. And she has experienced that. I mean, they almost killed her. So what Swedenborg says is you are the chooser.
Yeah.
You know, you're the one who listens to these voices and these feelings and intuition, and you choose which one you want to put your attention on. And where you put your attention, your energy goes also.
Mm.
Okay. So people don't realize that think of this. Your mind is running all the time. You're hearing all this garbage all the time. Everybody hears a voice in their head talking constantly. It's constantly jabbering about this, that, the political situation, people making judgments. It's kind of verbal diarrhea constantly, and it's almost impossible to shut it up. If that's who you are, then who in the dickens is listening to it?
Mm.
You can't be that crap and be listening to it at the same time. That crap isn't you. You're the one listening to it. There's a dichotomy there.
What about thinking though? If you're like I'm contemplating, I might be thinking in words. Is that not?
That comes in from the it depends on what you're thinking on.
Mm.
You know, if you're thinking on good stuff, that's motivated by the good side. Okay, so it comes in as a feeling,
Mm.
and then it goes in as a thought. If you're feeling rotten, you're not thinking good stuff. So the feeling or
Yeah.
intuition comes in, and you have an intuition about something, and then you start thinking about it. But the root of it is that intuition coming in from the positive side. If it's
Yeah.
good stuff,
Because I'm just,
if
as
it's
you're speaking, I'm reflecting on. I had like a body session, it's like an energetic body session. This is about 10 years ago. Before that, I was stuck in my head. I'd be walking along. I remember I walked past a beautiful lake in Croatia. And after we got round, they said, "What a beautiful lake." And I'd been looking at it, but I was so stuck in my head. I didn't even remember the lake, because I was so occupied in my head. And I remember I saw this guy's name, Shantan Nityama, in Brighton where I lived. And he said, "You're stuck in here." And we did a session and he actually moved me from here back into my body again. So instead of analyzing and overthinking, I'm now using my awareness with intuition and just sensing everything. And he says, I went from here, being trapped in here, and moved back into the body again. It was an
right,
embodied
right,
experience. Does that
yeah, the
still align with
body
what
and
you're
body
saying?
and the spirit. Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah, yeah.
that's it. So you move back into the spirit,
Yeah.
you know.
So now
But
I'm
but the
walking along. I'm
brain,
not. I'm not. I'm not having this like jabbering, thing in the head anymore. I just feel
right?
like I'm in the body, and if I need to use my that mind to like do a pub quiz or something, I can use it. But then I
You
know
can
how to go
turn it
back
on.
into the body again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So the brain is like a radio receiver. You know,
Right.
nobody's ever found a thought in the brain. They've done
Yeah.
millions of autopsies. Nobody's ever found a thought there. Thoughts don't come from the brain. The brain is the receiver. It's like a radio receiver. It tunes into a frequency.
It's an antenna. Yeah.
It's an antenna, and you're
Yeah.
the chooser. You're the chooser. It's the receiving thing. You choose either bad or good thoughts. You choose where you want to put your attention. The Native Americans, they said you have two wolves, one on each shoulder.
Yeah. That's right.
The one that grows is the one that you feed.
Yeah. That's right.
You know,
Well.
so these
Yeah.
these negative entities, they want you to feed the bad ones. They don't want you to realize that they're out there, that they're putting these negative thoughts in your mind. And we believe from the time kids that every thought that comes into our minds belongs to us. That's what we're taught. That you are your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. These thoughts are coming in from somewhere else. You are separate from your thoughts. So
I'm
if
just
you
trying to.
believe,
I'm trying to sort of challenge it in my mind to try and come up with a challenging question for that. I mean, for instance, let's just say you're feeling hungry, and you actually say to yourself, "I could really do with making myself a sandwich downstairs now." I mean, that's coming from yourself, no?
well, that's coming from your body saying, "Okay, I need some
Yeah,
attention."
yeah,
So they don't. There's a mind body link, but they don't know how that works.
mm,
If your spirit leaves your body dies, it rots, goes away.
yeah,
You know, so they're linked. You're like a guy that gets into a car and drives a car. It's not the car driving itself.
mm,
It's not your brain hearing your thoughts or your vision or your taste or your hearing. All that is comes from the spirit. If the spirit leaves the body, that body isn't hearing anything, it isn't seeing anything, it's not feeling anything.
mm,
The spirit hears, the spirit sees, it tastes. All that comes from the spirit.
mm,
So the spirit is like, in you, this is physical matter, but it's being driven by the spirit, by the individual spirit that lives in you.
mm,
And that's part of the all. It's part of everything.
yeah,
You're a spark of the universal consciousness, right?
mm,
Living in a physical body in a physical universe to experience that, you
mm,
know, because this is not the normal state of spirits being in this physical universe. So why these thoughts, these entities, these negative entities are so dangerous is because they hit us all. They
mm,
will insert thoughts into your thought stream. And everybody's experienced this. You're walking along the sidewalk, and
mm,
especially if you're driving a car and somebody cuts you off, it's like,
yeah, yeah.
you normally wouldn't do that.
You sound like Daffy Duck there. That was quite...
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah, yeah,
They insert these thoughts into your mind, and if you don't recognize that thought is not yours,
yeah,
and you believe it, they will lead you down this path until you become psychotic. If you believe everything they're telling you,
yeah.
you're going to
Oh,
turn
yeah,
into a paranoid schizophrenic that listens to their crap all the time. This guy's going to kill you. This guy's out to hurt you. This guy's out to rob you.
yeah.
Yeah, and they love that.
Yeah,
You know,
it's not just for people that are suffering with schizophrenia. This can happen to everyone. Because I
it
even know
happens.
that, like, I go through times when I get intrusive thoughts, and
Hmm.
I'll be stroking my cat, and the most crazy thought comes into my head to do something vicious, and I'm not,
Right.
and I love
That's
my cat
exact.
dearly, but it's just this intrusive thought, and it almost picks the most like absurd thing in that moment to do, or like
Right.
a train's coming, oh, I'll just jump in,
Right.
jump into, and it's like that's not, I would never do it, but it's almost like it's picking the most absurd thing
Right.
to do.
Right.
So I know
Yeah.
that I'm sure
I
other people have that,
Everybody has that.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh, what would happen if I drove my car into oncoming traffic?
yeah,
Or you're standing on a bridge and you go, oh, jump. Or I wonder what it's
yeah,
like
exactly,
to be
yeah,
jump or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
everybody. Those thoughts don't come from you. They're
mm.
not yours. These entities hate our guts. They hate us. They
Okay,
want to destroy us.
if they want to destroy us, but wouldn't they then lose the body to feed off though?
Well, that's a perplex. That's a perplex, and I don't know whether once they, I don't know if they affect your spirit
Yeah,
and then just bring that into the hell realm with them. But that was something I asked myself a lot.
yeah,
Okay, what are they feeding? Because they do feed off you.
yeah.
I mean, I that's one thing I saw at the state hospital is like every time these voices would attack these patients, their energy level would drop to nothing. You know, and you'd ask them. I mean, ask any of you who are working with schizophrenics now or have schizophrenic family, ask them after the voices attack you, how much energy do you have before they attack, and how much energy do you have after they attack? You know, consistently it's negative, less energy after they attack, after they're being attacked.
Yeah.
So I started doing statistics on that. I asked scores of them. How much energy do you have on a 1 to 10 scale?
Mm.
You know, before the voices attack, and how much energy do you have after? And we ran an analysis of variance on it, and it was statistically significant that after the voices attacked them, they had much less energy. It wasn't due to random, you know, and they'll all tell you this. So you ask them, well, okay, if you didn't use that energy, where did it go? Well, I don't know. You know, they don't even
Mm.
realize that until you bring it up. They won't even realize that their energy is gone after the voices attack until you bring it up to them. Their minds are so jumbled, they don't even recognize that. They just go, "Oh, I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling bad." They don't even recognize that that energy's been taken from them.
Mm.
You know, they just go, "Oh, I'm feeling bad. Something's wrong. I'm feeling bad." And I
It's
started
crazy.
asking them, "Where did that energy go?" Well, I don't know. That was a consistent answer. I don't know. Some of them would go, they take it, very few, but they realized, yeah. And the way, even to get them to that point, you go, okay, you know, every time the voices come, you've been hearing these voices for years, for decades in some cases. I
Mm.
mean, every time the voices come, your energy level drops. It's gone. If you stuck your hand in a fire 1,000 times and each time you got burned, what would be burning you? They didn't have any trouble coming up with, well, the fire.
Mm.
And then you turn it back and go, well, if you've heard these voices 100,000 times and every time you heard them, you were drained, what's draining you? They go, well, I don't know.
Mm.
It was like they're being blocked from the answer, until you hammer them long enough and then they go, the voices take it. And that's exactly what's happening. The
It's like
voices have to,
it's like Monsters Inc. You know the animated movie where they go across a threshold, a door, they go into a different world, and then they make the children scream, and they collect the screams, and then bring it back into the monsters world.
yep,
Like that,
that's
isn't it?
that's what's happening. That's what's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
You know, it's like you got a devil and an angel on both shoulders. It's which one you listen to. But they're feeding off of that negative emotional energy.
So
That's
where
their
are
food
they though?
source.
Where are these entities?
They're
Do you
they're
think?
they're all over. You got two with you right now. They're
Okay,
always following us. They
okay,
they can hear all your thoughts. They
right.
know all your feelings. So what happens is if you get pissed off at something or someone, they jump in there and they start pouring gasoline on that fire.
Oh, the
You
good
go,
and the bad,
oh,
like they say, like
yep,
the
yep,
the devil and the angel on each
yep.
shoulder, kind of thing. Yeah,
You've got two assigned to you constantly.
right.
They're always with you, two demons
Uh-huh.
and two angels.
Oh,
Now,
right.
schizophrenics have a lot more. You
Okay.
talk to some of those guys, they're hearing hundreds of voices. So they got a massive amount of these things, following them around. So you're assigned at least every person has two angels and two demons, and they're always arguing, trying to take control. And you look at the state of the world right now.
Mm.
You ask where the demons are. Look at what's happening in Ukraine right now.
Mm.
Look at what's happening with your government, with our lunatic that we have at the helm right now.
Mm.
You know, that guy's crazy as a bedbug.
Well, they're all
You know,
demonized. All the top politicians and world leaders
all the
seem to be
top
completely
politicians. You
demonized.
look what happened in Davos just now. I mean,
Oh yeah.
a, a couple of a couple of delightful people spoke up and said,
Mm.
"You elites are the problem. You are the problem." And they didn't like that.
Mhm. Mm.
So there's a change coming around now. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth is coming out, and it's
Truth
coming out.
vibrations.
Yep. You look what's happening in Germany now with the farmers. You know,
Yeah.
just massive revolt. farmers from Poland came over, farmers from, truck drivers from other countries came over. They all blocked the roads. They're all sending a message. You are full of crap. We're done with you,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's happening.
There's
But
a top
but
there's
you
a top down force occurring, like the smart cities and all that kind of stuff they want to push, the one world government. But then there's also like a grassroots uprising at the same time. Like
mhm,
the law of opposites. I think both are happening simultaneously at the moment, I think.
right.
Yeah.
And it's a battle between good and
Yeah.
evil,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
raging right now. Now, you look at all the wars going on, these demons feed on that negative energy. They feed on that suffering. They feed on that misery that
Yeah.
those wars cause. I mean, that's a hog's trough for them. They're in there just breeding hatred and they want us dead. They want to kill us. They want us not to. They hate us. They absolutely hate us.
This
So they want
demonic
to
realm,
cause
you
us.
mean? These entities.
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. These entities.
Yeah.
So yeah, they hit us all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
um, they foster and create negative emotions, and that's what they feed off of. Somebody called it loosh.
Lucia.
Okay, now um, they feed off of anger, they feed off anxiety, they feed off of guilt, shame, paranoia, all those negative emotions they're feeding off of, and they foster. So they'll jump in there. They're aware of all of your negative thoughts. As soon as you have a negative thought, they jump in there and try to foster it. So they're aware. And they energetically drain their victims. That's what they feed off of. So all these patterns started emerging. They get louder after sunset.
Mm.
Um, I remember one time I was sitting with a psychiatrist and a patient, and we were having a meeting to see about his medications and how they were adjusted. And the patient said, "Yeah, I'm still hearing the voices," and the doctor said, "Okay, I'll increase your medicines." And the psychiatrist then said, "Well, just ignore them. They just ignore them. They're hallucinations." So that stuck in my mind. I called that guy back a week later, brought him into my office. I said, "Remember we were with Doctor So and So when he told you just ignore your voices?" I asked him. I said, "How'd that work out for you?" And he said, "It didn't work at all. They just
Mm.
got louder.
Yeah.
They won't be ignored." So I started asking the others. Have you ever tried to ignore the voices? They said, "Oh yeah, yeah." They all tried to ignore them. They all found that when they try to ignore them, they get louder. They will not be ignored. Here's another pattern. So if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations. Um, they foster self-destructive behavior. They foster isolation. The, what they want is for the schizophrenic to sit around in their room,
Mm.
staring at the walls and listening to their bullcrap all day. They
Mm.
want them to be isolated. They want them. They want. They don't like relationships. They will tell the husband that the wife's cheating on them and the wife that the husband's cheating on them. They'll put those thoughts into their head.
Mm.
They'll cause as much disruption in relationships as they possibly can. And what's so dangerous about this is that the even though 23 times in the Bible, Jesus has cast out these entities out of different people. The Christian church nowadays treats that as some kind of 2,000-year-old fairy tale. Oh, that's just there's no demons now. They don't exist. I mean, that's back then they existed. They don't exist now in the
Mm.
scientific age. We have an explanation for everything. Bad, wrong. That's very dangerous.
Can I ask a
It's
question
very
about that?
dangerous.
Can I ask a question about the repeatable patterns? Because I was trying to think, could it not be that, for instance, if we were to both go out and have loads of alcohol, we would have the same patterns. We'd both start slurring our words and would both be stumbling around. They're like repeatable patterns because the body's been poisoned, and so
Right.
that's a reaction that we'd both share between us, right? So that's a repeatable pattern. Could it not be that these people with schizophrenia, their bodies have atrophied in the same way? And it's like the cells in the body giving off its own message, being, coordinated by
Well,
the brain, and
well,
as thoughts.
what they do is they feel bad. They don't
Yeah.
take care of themselves.
Yeah.
They won't take a bath forever. They don't eat well, so they're feeling bad.
Yeah.
You know, So that message does come in up from the body.
Yeah.
You don't feel good. You
Yeah.
don't feel well. You feel weak.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing they do, they try to keep people up so they can't sleep.
I have
So if
that.
they can weaken the body, they
Yeah.
can weaken the mind,
Yeah.
then they have more control. That's what they're after. They're after that control. They want to control that body so they can cause more damage with it. So you look at the
Mm.
negative effect of a schizophrenic on the family and on the entire society. It's like throwing a rock in a pond and watching the ripples go out. They upset everybody. They upset the family. They upset anybody they're around. They upset anybody that's with them. They will upset them. You know, it's this. So if they can drive people crazy, they not only drive that person crazy, they drive everybody else around them crazy. You know, so
And
it causes a lot of
yeah, and is
you
it
know,
empowering to say this to people? Because, if you're told that your thoughts are from someone else and you're not really the arbiter of these thoughts, you are just a kind of a conduit for something else outside of yourself. Is that not potentially disempowering? And also, you don't take accountability for yourself. Is that an issue?
no, it's empowering.
Okay.
I've had people write me from these interviews we do and going, hey, now that I know that these negative voices coming into my head are not me, it's helped me immensely.
Right. Okay.
Now I know that they're not mine. That isn't who I am, and now I can handle this.
Mm, mm.
It's empowering. It's not the other way around. It's the other way around when you believe the voices.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if they're telling you rotten stuff and you believe them, yeah, 180-degree turn, you're in trouble because 98% of what they tell people are lies. They don't care whether they're lies or not. They could care less about the person they're in. They hate the person they're in. All they want is
Mm.
that energy, but they have to turn that energy negative in order to get it. They can't deal with positive spiritual energy, you know. And if they can take down a preacher, that's like 10 points for them. They're heroes.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. Yeah, because it's like the queen bee. They're taking out the queen bee in a way, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's so-
so
it's fascinating. It really, really
so
is.
so so back to the state
Yeah.
hospital when I was
Mhm.
there, when I started asking these patients about what their voices were telling them,
Yeah.
and I started finding out bits and pieces of the puzzle. And these pieces were consistent. So if I found a piece and I'd ask another schizophrenic, hey, does this fit? Fits him. And I'd ask dozens. It was a pattern. If scores of schizophrenics were all having this same pattern, it was a pattern. Okay. So I got in trouble at the state hospital for asking patients about their voices. Okay, one patient got upset, and it wasn't him that was upset; it was the voices that got upset, and they
Mm.
had him go tell the psychiatrist, "Hey, this guy's asking me questions about the voices, and he's upsetting me." Okay, one unwritten rule at the state hospital is you don't upset schizophrenics unnecessarily. Because
Mm.
the psychiatrists are getting popped off by these guys, and they don't know why. They have no idea why these guys all of
Mm.
a sudden erupt on them and beat the crap out of them. They have no idea, you know.
Yeah.
So they're looking at these guys. Well, they're like dynamite.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like nitroglycerin. Don't be bouncing them around too much.
Mm.
So I got called into the first time called into the guy's office, and the psychiatrist, you don't ask these guys questions like that. Those are hallucinations. And when you ask them about their hallucinations, you are reinforcing the hallucinations and you're making them worse.
Right. Yeah.
I knew by then that wasn't true. It was bullcrap. You know, this guy was blowing smoke up my butt. He didn't even know it.
Mm.
So I got in trouble twice at the state hospital for asking questions about what these voices are telling people. You know, so I had to fly under the radar. I couldn't ask them a lot of questions all at once. I had to be very careful to not upset them. So it really slowed things down. It was like putting the brakes on. You know, um, but after I went back to the graduate school for some years, and then after I got back, I started working in ERs, doing psych crisis, and then eventually got a stable job with the state prison system here in Arizona. Okay, yeah, stable job in the psych department in the big state prison. So that place was loaded with schizophrenics. So what they did here in the U.S. is they closed down virtually all of the state hospitals, like where I used to work, and they dumped these people onto the streets, saying,
Mm.
"Oh, it's better for them to be in a normal environment." You know, they wouldn't take their medicines in the hospital when they were handed them. What makes them think that they were going to go out of their way to somehow find transportation to a mental health center and
Mm.
keep their appointments at a specific time and then take their medications when they wouldn't even take them when they were being handed to them? It was insanity.
Mm.
So what happened is all these guys got dumped onto the streets. They went nuts. They only had crime to turn to survive because you
Yeah.
know they turned to crime. They sold drugs. They used drugs. They were drugging the voices, and the voices were getting more and more stronger and stronger until they ended up in prison. So the prisons are now the new state hospitals, and they're costing more to keep people there than they did at the state hospital, and they're getting less humane treatment. You know,
Mm.
so the here I was again. I mean, by the time those 7 years at the state hospital, I still didn't have any. I had bits and pieces. You know, I knew the voices were running patterns, but I was still thinking, well, this is some part of their subconscious mind. It was something to do with some kind of physical thing. It was I didn't want to believe in demons or that they were being run by demons. And
Mm.
when I got to the state prison, if a patient or a prisoner went to the warden and started complaining that I was asking them about their voices, the warden would just go, "Get out of my face, man! Go play in the traffic or something. You know, get out of here." They wouldn't even give it a second thought. You
Mm.
know, the prisons were set up to deal with violence, so they weren't afraid of them going off. You know,
Mm.
they were prepared for that. They expected that. You know, so I was able to get away with decades of asking about the voices these people were hearing. Virtually the whole time I was there, I had a group of prisoners who agreed to tell me in real time what the voices were telling them when we were working together. So I had direct contact with the voices.
Mm.
I was able to talk to them through the patient, you know, um, and more information kept coming on up about them. Okay, and as that information kept coming out about the details of how these things worked and what they were able to do and what they were able to see and how they influenced people, my denial system started getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Right?
Mm.
And it was in shambles as these number of these patterns kept increasing. You know? And I saw that these patterns were they were not only present at the state hospital 2,000 miles away. They were also present in the mental health centers. They were present in the emergency rooms. They were present in the private hospitals I worked at, and they were present in these patients, the patients I was working with at the state hospital, at the prison. I mean, they were ubiquitous. They were everywhere, and there was the same patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, if they're running patterns, they can't be hallucinations. So I would continue to ask questions about them. And as these patterns increased, I started thinking of ways, okay, what would happen if I threw a monkey wrench into these patterns? How would the voices react?
Mm.
And they didn't react well. So with this group of patients I had in the prison, I would give them homework. I'd say, you know, go home and try this, and next week come back and tell me how it worked. You know,
Mm.
so I have 10 or 15 of them all at the same time. They all had homework assignments. You know, try this and come back and tell me what happened. And that went on for decades.
Mm.
18 years, at least 18 years, I was doing something like that. And more information was coming in. So uh, at one point, one of these guys comes in, and after our session, he turns around in the doorway and he says, "You know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you?" And he just looks at me, and I was like stunned. I'm like, "No, these things aren't in my head. They're in your head." I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And he
Mm.
just turns around and he walks away. You know, so I put that back in my little treasure chest back there. I mean, it was odd.
Mm.
It was like I was being given a warning that what he knew that I didn't know is that these things were potentially dangerous. And he was warning me. I didn't take the warning. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like it helped. I was an adrenaline junkie.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
that helped tremendously.
Oh, I
I mean,
see.
that helped tremendously. It was like if I wasn't an adrenaline junkie, I don't think I would have made it that far with this investigation. So I was reading a book one night called "The Voice of Knowledge" by a shaman called Miguel Ruiz. He was a South American shaman,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
up comes this thing where he's talking about what seemed to be these voices.
Yeah.
He was using other terms, but they were operationally the same thing. And he was also talking about them as parasites. You know,
Right.
and so I went, this is interesting. So I was always bringing stuff into the schizophrenics I was working with and asking them constantly, badgering them with questions. So I brought that book in, and the same guy that gave me a warning. You know, I
Mm.
I, I said, I'm going to read you a paragraph. I want you to tell me what you think about it, or what your voices say about it.
Mm.
You know. So I started reading, and the door was closed, and I look up at him, and I go, what do you think? And this electrical crackling erupted behind my back. It sounded just like an arc welder. I
Mhm.
mean, crack, 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 and I'm like, what's going on? And then it moves to the right wall, and it starts crackling up the right wall. It's just, and I don't see anything. I don't smell
Mm.
anything. Uh, it was only the sound. It sounded just like uh, electrical wire that was short circuiting a big electrical wire, or
Mm.
arc welder, and it's moving up the right wall. And I look at him and I said, "Do you hear that?" And he's just looking like a zombie. He's got this blank stare on his face, and I'm going, "He's going to attack." So I push my chair against the wall in case he does, so I could
Mm.
kick him off, because they only had female guards in the medical unit for some reason. They would be not very useful.
Yeah.
By the time they got there
Mm.
or could do anything, whatever's going to happen was going to happen. So I was getting ready,
Mm.
and you know, my attention was swinging as fast as I could bring it between the crackling and watching him to make sure he's not making any moves. And I still don't see anything. And it crackles all across the top of the office. It's crack, 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 crack. And I'm looking at him, and he's just looking like some kind of mindless zombie. And then it crackles down the left wall. This is going on for minutes. I mean, this wasn't just a short blurb.
Oh, right.
This was 3 or 4 minutes it went on. And then the crackling jumps into this Rubbermaid trash can by my left leg. And I bend over to look down in there. There's nothing there. But I'm hearing it crackle down in there. And then boom, just like that, it disappears, goes quiet. And I'm shocked. I mean, I'm just like, what just happened? I mean, I'm like freaked out. And I look at him, and he slowly gets up and he goes, I gotta leave. And I'm going, yeah, get out of here. Go, go.
Yeah.
You know. And so he shuffles out, wasn't with a normal gait, and he disappears down the hall. And I start expecting the walls to see if there's any burnt marks, because it sounded like, electricity crackling like that usually leaves some kind of burns.
Yeah.
There was no physical evidence that this had ever happened. And I'm start
Crazy.
thinking, am I going nuts? Am I losing my mind?
Mm.
And so I go out in the hallway and I start checking the doctor's offices out there, the nurse's office. Nobody's in. They're not in yet. All those offices are closed and
Mhm.
locked. There is no explanation. You know, I was numb. I mean, I was just totally, I couldn't think. It was like I got hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat. I closed my office. I didn't do anything for the rest of the day. I canceled all my appointments and just stared out the window like, where is this going? What am I getting myself into? Am I going crazy?
Right.
You know, it's like, and there
Terrifying.
was nobody I could talk to. I
Mm.
couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't even talk to my wife. I mean, the little bit I told her about what I was learning about these voices is like, no, you shouldn't be picking through the heads of psychotic killers anyway.
Mm.
You shouldn't be doing that. So all it did was upset her. And I certainly couldn't go to my boss and go, hey, this just happened. You know, there was nobody I could talk to. And I couldn't
Mm.
talk to about what I was finding about these things either. The only people who understood what I was learning about these things were the schizophrenics themselves. I could talk to
Yeah.
them, any of them, about this stuff. They go,
Yeah.
"Hey, your voices are negative. They're anti-religious. They foster Oh yeah, yeah, they do. Well, yep, yep, yep." It was like a divide between the worlds, you
Right.
know.
What did that guy say it
And
was then? Did he say what it was, the electrical thing that went around the
well,
room?
you know what? It took me 3 or 4 months to get the guts to call him back in and ask him.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see him. It's like it was like no, 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 no. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so finally, my curiosity overcame that,
Yeah.
and the adrenaline junkie. I guess I started getting a little bored, so I called him back in, and he came back. He looked normal. He looked good. I was expecting him to be a wreck.
All right.
I'm going, if they have that much control over him that they can do something like that, he's going to be a wreck. But I was really surprised to see he walked in. He looked good. He had good energy, and
Yeah.
I told him so. I said, hey, I thought you were going to be a wreck. He goes, no, no, I'm doing what you told me to. I haven't got rid of the voices, but I'm able to hold them. Not allow them to
Mm.
take any more control.
Right.
And I said, come on in and talk to me.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of small talk, I asked him. I said, did you hear that crackling in the office last time you were here?
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, yeah, I heard it. But he said, I was surprised you did, you know. And I asked him, I said, what was that? And he said, that was them. I said, them, the voices? That was the voices? He said, yeah, that was the voices. And I said, well, what in the blazes were they doing? And he said, they were trying to scare you off. I told him, I said, they did one damn good job. And
Gosh.
so then I asked him, I said, you looked like a zombie when you left the office. I said, you looked very strange. I said, what were they telling you as you left the office? He said, they were telling me to go get a shank and stick it in your belly.
Oh my God.
The shank is a homemade
Yeah.
prison knife that they make from sharp pieces of metal that they can steal from anywhere they can get it. And I was thinking, oh, he wouldn't do that. I was working with him for 6 months.
Mm.
He's holding his own. He looks like he wants to get better. He wouldn't do something like that.
Yeah.
And I asked him then, well, why didn't you do it? And his response was, um, I couldn't find a shank and nobody would give me one. You know, but the same guy, I left out one other warning I had in between these two
Mm. Mm.
was one day he came to my office without a pass. Now this was before this crackling thing and after the warning at the
Mm.
door. So he come in and he goes, the voices want to talk to you, and that had never happened before. It was always the patient would tell me what the voices were saying, and then I would tell the patient, "Well, go tell them to stick their head in the toilet or something like that." You know,
Mm.
so it would always to be the patient was the mediator. They never came out and spoke to me directly. You know, so for them to come out and say we want to speak directly was a whole different deal.
Right.
You know, so that took me by surprise. So I called him in, closed the door, and I said, "Okay, what do they have to say?" These words came out of his mouth. You have no right to interfere with our way of life. Boom. My head exploded. That's when my denial system completely fell apart.
Mm.
It just completely disintegrated, and again, I was stunned, you know, and I said something like, what do you mean I have no right? You're destroying these people. You know, I don't remember what happened after that because I was in shock. you know. it was at that moment that I knew that these were entities, that I wasn't dealing with hallucinations, that there was no other explanation, that these voices were entities, they were negative entities, and they were warning me off, telling me I had no right to interfere with this stuff.
Mm.
And, come to think of it, maybe in some cases I didn't have any right, but in other cases, I think I did,
Mm.
you know. Um, so it was that progression of things, and the patterns just kept going on and on and on and on. You know.
Did you ask them what? Did you ever ask them like, "What's your name?" You know, like the name of the entity that was coming through them.
There's some of them that I did. Some very few of them would tell me the names. There was one that said, just like in the Bible, it was strange. He said, "My name is Legion."
Oh.
I remember that. Um, you know, they for some reason they didn't want to give a name. Most of them, uh, I don't know why, but some of them did. Okay,
Mm.
and then I started asking them, what was it like there, and it was hellish. You know, it appears that the ones that, for the most part, were infecting the schizophrenics were assigned to them to destroy them. Okay, and these voices were told there was a hierarchy of them. So they had commanders, they had chief guy, and then these high level ones, and then intermediate ones like sergeants, and then they had the foot soldiers. Usually it was the foot soldiers that were assigned to the schizophrenics, and they were told
Mm.
that if they didn't destroy that guy, they would be destroyed or punished. So they were told that they didn't have any light in them. Okay, and that if if they
Mm.
didn't do what they were told, they would cease to exist, or they would go to a place called the pit. You know, so they were basically slaves of these higher echelons, and they were miserable.
Mm.
Uh, they had to give the major part of the energy that they took from these patients to these higher ups. So they were basically slaves. You know? And in some cases, you could ask them, if you could get out, if you could break free of these things, would you do that? And they said yes. Okay.
Mm.
So you could snap a cord that they were in control. And um, first, before that, you'd ask them, do you have any light in you? They'd say, no, we don't have any light in you. So if you say, okay, come with me and look, we'll go look and see. Okay? And then what they would see would be a dim orange light. And what was strange is when they saw that dim orange light, I'd ask them, well, you were told by your higher ups that you didn't have any light in you. You were lied to. How do you feel about that?
Mm.
They would get angry.
All right.
You know, they're liars themselves. They lie about everything. But if when they
Mm.
were lied to about that, they got furious. You know, and then you would ask them, well, okay, they lied to you. You know, you're a slave of theirs. Would you leave if you could? And they say, yeah. And if you could get them to walk into the light, then you could say, okay, think of some relatives or somebody that's on the other side that could come and pick you up, or ask the angels to come and pick you up. Somebody will come and get you.
Mm.
You know? And when that happened, and sometimes it was an animal, like a horse or a dog or something, they come and get these guys. And once they disappeared into the light, they were carried off. That voice disappeared. It was no longer there. Now, other ones would come, but that one was gone. So there's a whole like science to this, and there are people that are much better at that
Mm.
kind of thing than I am.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like in undergraduate school compared to some of these guys who that's their whole profession. They call them spirit releasers
Yeah.
to get rid of these things. The bottom line is, if
Mm.
these people don't get on a positive spiritual path and stay there,
Yeah.
these things are going to keep coming back.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate solution. You know, and you look at the psychiatrists, these high priests of mental health. They're completely unaware of any of this. You know, right
Mm.
now there are more psychiatrists, more psychologists, and um, more psychiatric drugs on this planet than any other time in the history of man. Okay? And look at what's happening. You know, there's close to 50,000 people in the United States kill themselves every year. That's as many as that died in Vietnam.
Mm.
Are these drugs helping them? No. As a matter of fact, on some of these antidepressant drugs, um, there's a warning that they're toxic. You
Mm.
know that they cause mental illness or suicidal ideation. Okay, and you look at the people uh, that are running the mental health system, these psychiatrists. You know, if you look at the suicide rate of a population, that tells you something about their stability. Okay, you can look at schizophrenics. The National Institute of Mental Health here in the U.S. says that 4.9% of people with schizophrenia die by suicide. Their suicide rate is 5 to 10 times that of the general population. They're not stable. Now let's take a look at psychiatry, the people who run the
Mm.
mental health system in the Western world. According to the Journal of American Medical Association, the suicide rate for psychiatrists is 5.9 times that of the general population. Their suicide rate is right up there with the schizophrenics.
Mm.
These are the people who are running the mental health system in the Western world. The Journal of Clinical Psychiatry in August 1980 did a 5-year study of 18,730 consecutive physician deaths by suicide and found that psychiatrists suicide regularly year by year at rates more than twice that expected. And the differences are statistically significant.
Mm.
Right. You look at their assault rate. Again, we talked about this earlier. Assault rates for all jobs based on a study of 120,000 assaults on the job from 1987 to 1992 over 5 years reported the assault rate for all jobs was 12.6 for 1,000. The assault rate for regular doctors, not psychiatrists, was 16.2 per 1,000. The assault rate for custody staff, these are people who are around schizophrenics 24 hours a day, was 69 per 1,000. The assault rate upon psychiatrists was 65 per 1,000, or 5.9 times that greater than the normal population.
Mm.
So not are they being or suiciding more, they're getting assaulted more. You know.
So, what is the cure, do you think, for this? The real cure, not the psychotic drugs that just suppress the symptoms. Is it a spiritual cleanse, and what does that look like?
Well, so what you can do is you know they go to it. People that I know they've gone to an exorcist. Okay, the voices are gone. Okay, but it's like the Bible said, you can clean the house, but if you don't fill it with something else,
Mm.
these things are going to come back. So from what I've seen a lot with the exorcist, if yeah, they'll get rid of these things. Okay, but if they don't get on a positive spiritual path,
Mm.
and realize that they are a spirit and that they need to nourish that spirit, these things will come back. Just like they stop the meds, they come back.
How do they nourish it?
Well, there's a number of ways to nourish it. The Eastern ways, you got autobiography of a yogi,
Mm.
you know, who talks about God. They have to return to God.
Mm.
If they don't do that, they're going to stay plagued. That's all there is to it. They have to get on a positive spiritual path and stay there. You know, 'Cause otherwise they're going to be duped by these guys. And the fact that these entities, if they walk into the light, disappear for good, that says something.
Mm.
So um, I would I would I would recommend that people who can look into the works of Emanuel Swedenborg. He was a Christian mystic
Hmm.
that lived some 300 years ago.
Mm.
Okay? He was one of the top scientists of their day. He was the chief mining engineer for the Queen of Sweden. He
Hmm.
was the Leonardo da Vinci of his time. He had all kinds of patents and stuff under his name. He was also precognitive. He could see things that were going to happen in the future. Yeah. Um, at the age of 50, he said Jesus Christ came to him and said, okay, drop all that stuff, drop all that physical stuff now, stop your scientific endeavors. I'm going to give you access to heaven and hell. And what I want you to do is you go and interview people in those places, and then you come back to Earth and write about it so the people of the planet know
Right.
what's going on. So he did just that. He wrote volumes about this stuff. Okay. And one of his favorite works, or one of his most widely read works, is a work called Heaven and Hell by Emanuel Swedenborg. He interviews angels and he interviews demons. And that's where a fella named Wilson Van Dusen, okay, he wrote the book The Presence of Other Worlds. He was a clinical psychologist in Northern uh, California.
Mm.
Okay. So I read his book and I saw that what he was talking about matched what I was seeing with schizophrenics. Right. Now, he he kept calling them hallucinations, but he treated them as individual entities. So at some point after this crackling thing, I got to find this guy. You know, I
Mm.
didn't even know if he was still alive, but I knew he was a Swedenborgian. And so I found there was a Swedenborg church here in Tucson, and I went and I talked to the preacher at that time, Frank, Frank, Frank. What was his last name? I forgot his last name, but uh, he said, "Yeah, I think Van Dusen is still alive. He's up in Eureka, California. Uh, I'll put you in touch."
Mm.
And he did. Van Dusen was extremely wary.
Mm.
You know, he wanted to know. He wanted to see my license, my license for to practice.
Mm.
He wanted to see my transcripts. It was like all this stuff, you know. And after that
Mm.
thing that happened, I I made copies and I sent them all to him. You know, finally he realized I was legit, and we worked together for an entire year. Now he wrote about them in the presence of other worlds. Wrote about these voices. Now he also noticed that they matched exactly what Swedenborg was talking about when he was talking about evil spirits. That these voices the schizophrenics heard, there was a one-to-one correlation between them and what Swedenborg was talking about. Right. So if Swedenborg has one side of the puzzle, he's also got the other. I mean, the two opposite things.
Mm.
So Van Dusen, he was like the chief clinical psychologist at this prison. So he was working at a state hospital. It was a state hospital. He started testing the voices and the patient independently. So he would give an MMPI, which is the gold standard test for psychology, and a Rorschach and other psych tests to both the patient and the voices independently. So he'd tell the patient, he said, I want you to take this and keep your voices out of it. All right. You answer it as you see fit. And
Mm.
then he would give it to the patient again. He said, let your voices take this. And he found that the voices were more psychotic than the patient was.
Mm.
That was interesting, you know. And we talked and talked and talked about these things. We started writing a book. Um, he told me his experiences with these things. Um, we started writing a book, and then after a year of talking and trying things, he'd been fighting this cancer, and it came back, and it killed him within a matter of a few months.
Mm.
And he was writing on this book until he just couldn't hold a pen anymore. That's how bad he wanted this information to get out to the world.
Right.
You know, you know. So before that, he sent me a book called 30 Years Among the Dead. It was I think a psychiatrist or psychologist who in the 20s, his wife was a psychic, and he found that if he could administer a static electric shock to the patient, that the voices experienced that as a thunderstorm, as a lightning storm. And it was very uncomfortable for them.
Mm.
And they would actually leave the body temporarily. And when they did, his wife, who was a psychic, would pick up on them and then talk them into the light, and they would vanish.
Oh, right.
And he wrote a whole book on this, you know. So Van Dusen sent that to me, and I read it, and I'm going, okay, I can't shock the prisoners I'm working with. I'll get fired and probably face criminal charges.
Mm.
You know, so here's Van Dusen sending me these articles. Well, here's where you can get a static electric shock machine.
Mm.
And I wrote him back. I said, "You got to be nuts! You're going to get me
Yeah,
fired."
yeah, exactly.
You know,
Mm.
so I'm going, what else could I use? You know, what could I get away with? You know, so I did find out earlier that the 23rd Psalm did work to torment the
Mm.
voices. So I started handing that out to the schizophrenics and said, when the voices come, read the 23rd Psalm to them. At least you're hitting them back. At least you have some control, you know? And they would do that. But when the chief psychologist found out I was handing out the 23rd Psalm, he was he ordered me to stop it.
Mm.
Do not do that.
Who did? Sorry, who ordered it?
The chief psychologist, the head psychologist of the prison,
Wow.
my boss. You will not do that. Just like the psychiatrist at the state hospital, you will not answer questions or ask questions of these people,
Mm.
you know. And I'm telling them, hey, listen, when they snap the rubber band, the voices shut up. You know, I didn't tell them why I
Yeah.
wanted them to shut up for a while because they come back in just a little while. I mean, it's almost like the voices get them into a trance
Yeah.
and they can't break that trance. And by snapping that rubber band, that trance is broken temporarily. And it 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 it, it resonated with one prisoner that I worked with where the voices kind of took over and they told him, they said, take your car, take your pistol, drive off into the desert until you run out of gas, and then pull off the side of the road and shoot yourself. So he said, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. So he did that. He took his gun, drove his car till he ran out of gas, parked it on the side of the road, walked out into the desert, took his gun, and had it ready. He cocked it, had it ready. And then this bird, he said that it was this crazy bird that he'd never seen in his life. And he was an Arizona resident.
Mm.
So he would have known most birds. He said this thing came in a tree and started screaming at him, you know. So he took the gun and he shot it at the bird, and the blast of the gun woke him up. So it was like he was in some kind of trance.
Right.
And he looked at the gun and he goes, what was I going to do? You know, and he realized he was about to shoot himself. And I asked him, I said, did you hit the bird? And he said, no, I didn't.
Good. I was going to ask that as well.
No, I was concerned about the bird,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the same kind of trance. The voices put them into this kind of trance, and they have the control, and that snap of the rubber band breaks that trance.
Mm.
So you could give them the 23rd Psalm all you wanted. I would do that, and then they would forget to read it.
Yeah.
You know, even if they were carrying it around in their pocket, or they would lose it. You know? So I'd say, okay, take this rubber band, and when the voices start in on you, take it and snap it, and then read the 23rd Psalm. You know, the voices are tormenting you, you torment them back.
Why
Okay.
elastic
And this
band
is
though? Is it just metaphorical? It's
no,
just
no,
something
no,
that
no. No,
no?
they take it, they put it on their wrist and they snap it hard so that it stings.
Right.
Like put a rubber band around your wrist and snap it hard. It'll sting.
Okay.
It's the
It's enough
closest
to
thing to,
it's enough to break
yep,
them out of the trance, right?
right. It's the closest thing to a shock that I could think
Gotcha.
of. And you know, this went on for weeks. I mean, I was being plagued by, okay, how could I administer a shock to these people without
Mm.
getting fired? You know, and one day I was standing in front of a secretary's desk talking to the secretary, and I saw this rubber band on her desk. And I went, that idea, okay,
Mm.
it didn't come from me. It came from somewhere else. Take that rubber band, that will work, you know. And it wasn't even a thought. It was just like I looked at it and it was a knowing, you know, it
Mm.
just came. And then the
Mm.
thought followed it,
Yeah.
you know. It was like my attention got drawn to the rubber band and I'm looking at this rubber band. I mean, that's not a normal thing to do, to sit there and stare at a rubber band. I'm staring at this rubber band for a few seconds and going, you know, with this feeling like, and then the thought came, the feeling came, that just might work. And then the thought followed it. Okay. And then I did it and it did
Mm.
work. So
Yeah.
here were all these prisoners walking around, snapping their wrists and reading the 23rd Psalm.
Mm.
And it was breaking up that pattern and it
Yeah.
was tormenting the voices. And they were feeling like they had some minimal amount of control over these things now, you know? And it was also kind of a way telling them, hey, this is the way, you know, the 23rd Psalm is pointing the way, you know, for them to move. You know? And they were seeing a hardcore effect. They were seeing
Mm.
a tangible effect. So it's a way I could get that information to them without preaching. Because you start preaching to them, forget it.
Yeah.
They're not going to listen to anything. You know,
Mm.
we already talked about what happened when they went into churches. Right. So that was working. And then the chief psychologist, you will stop that. Okay. Ordered. You know, because some of these guys were snapping the rubber band so many times that their wrists were red.
Mm.
You know, so I don't know if he knew that or not. I knew that. You know, I saw that and told him to, hey, lay off. You know, uh, now so
Mm.
it was like in the prison, no good deed. It was like the devil's playground. No good deed went unpunished in that place. So I got away with these investigations until
Mm.
prisoners started recovering,
Mm.
completely recovering. It
Wow.
wasn't supposed to happen,
Yeah.
you know. And with what I knew then, it took a while. I mean, it took a while. It took months, you know.
Mm.
But eventually, hey, the voices left. You know, one guy said the voices screamed and were gone. He said the voices were, or the when the voices left, he said the silence was deafening because he for decades he had been hearing these things chattering in his head, and now he had silence.
Mm.
You know, it was like another prisoner said they screamed and left.
Mm.
Another one said they got bored with me because they couldn't upset me anymore. So
Oh, wow.
they just said you're no fun anymore. We're going to go find somebody else. Yeah. So what was happening is these guys who had been on medications the entire time they were in prison would tell the psychiatrist, "Hey, I don't need them anymore." You know, and when there were there were there were two levels of management in between me. Okay, so there was a psychologist who was my supervisor, and then there was the chief psychologist who was his supervisor. Okay, so the the psychologist over me would found out that these guys weren't taking their meds and they weren't asking for them and they weren't crazy. So that wasn't supposed to happen,
Mm.
you know.
Plus, they're not getting the money.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. He wasn't concerned about that, but it was
Mm.
like uh, Marzinsky's doing something that isn't kosher,
Yeah.
you know. Because I'd go in and I'd spend 2 3 hours with these people. You know, I was fascinated by the voices and what they were telling them, and we were having these in-depth conversations. Virtually anybody else on the psych staff couldn't stand being with these guys for 20 minutes. They would go, okay, you're stable. Okay, see you next month. That would be it. And they saw I was in there for hours with them. And they go, That's odd. What is he doing in there with ours? And then he started saying they were recovering.
Mm.
That wasn't supposed to happen. So he went to the chief psychologist and said, I don't know what Marzinsky's doing in there, but these patients are telling me that they're good. They don't need the meds anymore. You
Mm.
know. So there was one guy completely recovered. They cornered him and got him in the office. And here's the psychologist asking him, well, what's Marzinsky doing in there with you? And he snapped on him. He said, he's helping us, not like you, asshole. He could have gone all day without doing that because that infuriated this guy.
Mm.
So this psychologist says, okay, I have a valid MMPI from the time you came into the prison system. It says that you're schizophrenic.
Mm.
It's a valid profile. Okay. Would you be willing to take another one right now? And he said, yeah, I'll take another one.
Mm.
So he gave him another MMPI. The guy came out as normal. You know,
Right.
the psychotic scale was down to virtually nothing. This is their gold standard test.
Mm.
So now he's going, Marzinsky's doing something that he shouldn't be doing, you know, and he didn't ask my permission to do it.
Oh, God.
So he goes up to the chief psychologist, and the chief psychologist starts an inquisition. He starts this investigation,
Mm.
and uh, they're pulling in all these schizophrenics and asking them questions, and they all protected me. You know, they
Mm.
didn't get any information from any of those schizophrenics. They all knew what they were up to, and they didn't tell them anything, and they were frustrated as all get out. You know,
Mm.
so I got hauled up before the medical director by these two, and they were going, "What are you doing in your sessions?" And what was interesting is that all these spiritual staff started coming up to me and saying, "This is how you handle this situation. You don't tell them anything that you don't have to. Just yes or no. Don't tell them anything extra. Don't get sucked into anything."
Mm.
So here they are, the Inquisition, the medical director of the prison. And here's the chief psychologist and this other psychologist. And it was like a board there. And they were going, what are you doing in there with these patients? I was like, well, I'm talking to them.
Mm.
I'm talking to them. What do you think I'm doing in there? Well, what are you talking to them about? They're talking to them, same stuff you talk to them about. Well,
Mm.
what are you doing in there for so long? Well, I'm listening to what they have to say. But they're getting more and more frustrated. Nothing's coming out. And so at the end, the medical director goes, well, if he's doing something that's helping and we don't have to spend money on medicines, let him do it.
Mm.
He's not
Mm.
causing any problems. Let him
Yeah,
if these
exactly.
guys are getting better and we don't have to spend money on drugs, that's good.
Mm.
He tells these other two. So I was safe for another year. Okay, until that medical director left. And then this chief psychologist he's on me again,
Mm.
you know. And so it was like 2 years of misery with this guy until I got to where I was close to being able to retire. And uh, what they did is he sent me to a Spanish speaking unit, and my Spanish is very poor. So
Mm.
my effectiveness there was
No.
virtually nothing. Yeah. And I was working with this one Spanish schizophrenic guy who was able to understand some English, and they got hold of him. Okay, and they corralled him and said, "Hey, well, what's he doing in there with you?" And he goes, "Well, he's doing this and this and this, and he's telling me this, and none of that matched what they felt should be going on.
Mm.
It was mostly a lot of spiritual stuff, and this is what you can do to fight back against the voices." And they go, okay, we got you. You know, you're in for it now. And
Mm.
I checked my retirement thing, and I went, well, if I buy back 1 year, I can retire now and get out of there. So I did that, and I hit the ejection seat and just blew out of there.
Mm.
And then went into working as a contractor for a while. You know?
Yeah.
But their whole thing is their whole bullcrap is set up around another huge lie, and that's their DSM. this 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 Bible that they have of mental illnesses. You
DSM.
know, the DSM. It's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Right.
That's the Bible for psychiatry and
Mhm.
psychology. That was another thing I found was a complete fabrication. Okay, they have 297 different mental disorders in
Mm.
that Bible. I mean, it's this
Yeah.
big Bible of mental disorders that they're forcing down the throats of graduate students in psychology and psychiatry. That's the Bible. You need to memorize these disorders, these mental illnesses. There's not a single objective test for any of those mental illnesses. None.
Mm.
There is no blood test. There's no uh, EEG, EKG. It's just like the biological disorder crap. The same thing. There is no proof that these exist. There is no there is no test. There's no they can diagnose us all they want, but these are all subjective. What they've done is they've taken the whole stratum of human behavior and they've broken it up into mental illnesses, and then they've made it a disorder. And one guy who was in that order, it's a group of psychiatrists that get together once every few years and make up more mental disorders. They just make them up out of thin air. A guy comes in and he goes, "Hey, I got a new mental disorder. It's this and this and this, they do this and this is what it looks like, and these are the subcategories of it." And I mean, you open this thing and it looks like scientific work. I mean,
Mm.
here's all these numbers and categories and da 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 and subcategories and it looks like it really looks like a mad scientist put it together, but it looks like something really official and they poured
Mm.
a lot of work into it. It it doesn't mean anything. I mean,
Mm.
they it's ways of classifying these different behaviors, and then they have these different drugs that they use for these different behaviors. If they're depressed, they get antidepressants, and they have all these categories of depression, but they need a diagnosis to put on the insurance forms. If they don't have a diagnosis, insurance isn't going to pay for anything.
Right.
you know so
Mm.
that they make up more and more of these mental illnesses, you know and they're making what oh I have the thing somewhere. It's just um like it's in the billions of dollars a year selling these drugs. Okay,
Mm.
so all these mental disorders are fabricated. Not a single one of them has uh, any kind of test that will verify them. So in 1952, they started out with 106 psychiatric disorders. In 1980, they had now fabricated 256 disorders. So every time they
Mm.
meet, there's more disorders. Okay? The DSM-5, which is in operation now, has 297 psychiatric disorders, and more coming out every year. What they basically do is they're just a list of behavioral symptoms that these committees of psychiatrists have debated and decided they are clusters of symptoms that are mental disorders. They're
Mm.
behaviors. Two-thirds of those psychiatrists are on the board. They're responsible for coming up with these diagnoses, have ties to the pharmaceutical industry. Two-thirds.
Mm.
Like they go, what crap can we make up now that we can get paid for? We'll make it into a disorder and we'll get paid for. There are no blood tests, there's no lab tests, there's no X-ray. These are just classes of behaviors that a group of psychiatrists have decided are mental disorders. There's no test for any of them.
Yeah.
They're voted into being and they're voted into extinction. They vote them in and out.
What do you mean by that? Extinction?
Yeah, if they don't like a diagnosis or it's no longer useful to them,
Yeah.
they vote it out. I heard there was something called the
Mm.
Southern Bell syndrome they had for a while. You know, Let me see. Here's a small listing of some of these diagnoses that they've come up with. Okay,
Mm.
Mathematics disorder. If you don't like math,
Oh
you're
God, yeah.
disordered.
Yeah.
Okay. Caffeine intoxication disorder. You drink too much coffee, you're disordered. It's in their DSM. Sibling relational disorder. If the kids are fighting, there's a relational disorder. You know, sexual orientation disturbance, homosexuality. You know, now here's where it gets really wild. Florence syndrome. This is being overwhelmed by beauty, such as in Florence, Italy. Symptoms are fading and dizziness. The treatment are antidepressant drugs.
There's always a pill for it, isn't there? That's the
Always a
thing.
pill for it. Paris syndrome
Mm.
mostly happens to Japanese visiting France. Symptoms include depression, anxiety, feelings of persecution. Before they come up with this crap, that would have been called cultural shock. No,
Mm.
now they turned it into a disorder. You know,
It's funny how
it's
they don't have a disorder for the latest trans stuff, though, do they? That's you're born with that,
oh yeah,
apparently.
they got one.
Have they? Oh, they do.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know what it is, but they've got it.
Mm.
You know, so this is another one of their huge scams. It's
Mm.
and here's this was taken off the internet not long ago, and this is from a famous hospital in the United States, the Cleveland Clinic. It goes experts now. So what they changed their language now. Okay, so they go experts suspect that several factors play a role, and they're talking about schizophrenia.
Mm.
Okay, the first one they name is chemical imbalances in your brain. Right here,
Yeah.
you know, labeled.
Hmm.
They're still pushing it, even though they know it's a lie. So you look at what these drugs are doing. They're not helping. They're not helping cure anything.
Mm.
Okay, but there is something out there that recently came about, and it's called the Mace Energy Method. Okay, so thoughts are energy.
Mm.
You feelings are energy. Memory is energy.
Mm.
You know, mental illness is energy. It's displaced energy. Okay, these guys are using physical drugs to try to treat an energetic condition.
Mm.
What it's like is if you have a magnet, a strong magnet, you can't see that magnetic field. You can't feel it. You can't taste it. You can't hear it. You can't touch it. Just like the voices, these that magnetic field is not existent to our senses. You know, so what that would be is psychiatry calling that magnetic field a hallucination.
Mm.
If somebody could see that field physically, they would be given drugs because they were hallucinating.
No.
You get a jar of iron filings, you put that over the magnetic field, you can see that field now. The iron filings take the shape of that magnetic field. Okay, so pouring these toxic drugs into people is like trying to pour Thorazine on that magnetic field and gumming it up to try to get rid of the magnetic field.
Yeah.
Okay. So what they're doing, they're basically they're not really curing the
Mm.
mental illness. They're just drugging the brain. They're not getting at the cause. Okay. And these are just some of the side effects of SSRIs. These are antidepressants.
Mm.
These are supposed to be fixing people. Nausea, weight gain, trouble sleeping, dry mouth, blurred vision, dizziness, anxiety, headaches, diarrhea, constipation, sexual problems, fatigue, tremors, increased swelling, lower tolerance to alcohol, bleeding, lower sodium levels, vomiting, restlessness, muscle cramps, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's worse for the antipsychotic drugs. And they're not curing anything. These don't cure
Yeah.
depression. Now this MACE energy method does. Okay, it was come up. It was formulated by a. He wasn't a psychiatrist. He wasn't a psychologist. He had a clean slate. He wasn't brainwashed by years of college and
Mm.
graduate school like I was. I had to overcome all that brainwashing to get to the point where I can talk to you about this stuff now.
Mm.
You know, I would say 90% of what I learned was not useful in the clinical field on the front lines. Okay. Now the MACE method is. And this guy, he was a ship captain. He drove these
Mm.
big freighter ships back and forth across the ocean. But he was like uh, you know the the guy who saw the apple fall. He was like Newton. He saw these symptoms and he went from there, and he found that the mind doesn't work anything like the psychiatrist or the psychologist think. You know that they have no grasp of what the mind actually is.
Mm.
He said the mind is energetic, and what it does is it just takes pictures of where you put your attention. Okay, and those pictures can be used to get rid of psychiatric illnesses. There's a way to transfer those traumas to these images and drain those images, and that depression disappears.
Mm.
Okay? Um, so I ran into that. I read his books and I was using it with my patients, and it was working. Okay. And I'm like, this works better than anything else I've ever seen. So one day, and I was happy with that. I mean, something that actually works, and I don't, I have the background to be able to put that kind of stuff together. Many other people may not, but there are going to be people who do, So Mace wrote two books. He wrote Causism, which means that this gets to the cause of mental illness. And he wrote Energy Over Mind, which means that energy can control the mind, right? Or has effects on the mind.
Yeah.
There's enough in there for people to understand what this is. Um, so I started using it, and I was happy with that. And then one day I get a email from somebody, and I get a lot of strange emails doing what I'm doing. And he goes, "Hey, there's somebody I want you to meet." And
Mm.
he goes, "At worst, she'll be like a jolly old grandmother." And I'm looking at this and going, "This is odd. This is way out of character for the emails I usually get." Uh, and I went, something in me said, "You need to look into this." It was like,
Mm.
remember I was telling you, it was a message. It was, I'm
Mm.
looking at this and something within is like, if I had to put it in the words, and it wasn't words at that time, it was
Mm.
just like, this is odd. It was this feeling that you need to look into this, you know, and I went, okay. I wrote him back and I said, okay, she won't bite me. I'll listen to her. So it turns out she was the chief trainer for the MACE organization in Australia. Okay. And I'm hammering her with all kinds of questions. And she's saying, yes, this stuff really does work. She said, to um, we've taken it to the universities in Australia, and we demonstrated how well it worked. And they said, if you give us the patent for it, we might do something with it.
Mm.
And they went, screw you. You know, we don't trust you to do anything with anything.
Mm.
So they walked away with that. So they took it up to the Australian legislature. They showed the legislatures how well it worked. Okay. They went, oh yeah, this is great. And then they just pushed it under the bridge. Now, psychiatry isn't going to want this information out.
Yeah.
They're not going to want something that works out. They're making $7.4 billion a year selling these toxic drugs of theirs. They don't want anything out that works.
Of course.
So people who are interested in a psychotherapy that actually works, if they're depressed,
Mm.
if they have trauma, and trauma is the cause of most of this stuff. Trauma is the root base for psychosis. So even though MACE doesn't work great with psychosis, it makes things better. So what it does is it removes this negative energy that these entities feed off of. It gets rid of it. It's gone.
Mm.
So a guy might be depressed, come in very depressed, and then when he leaves after an hour or so, that depression is gone. It's just gone like magic. Okay. I'm going to give you a website here. It's
Mm.
www.maceenergymethod.com. Okay. There you can
Okay.
go read about this. There's a
Mm.
list of therapists there that you can try out. And it's going to be a whole lot cheaper than going to visit a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
going to a pharmacist, getting their toxic drugs, and then taking these toxic drugs that are bad for you. And I'm telling you, I've been through years and years of training and on the job training
Mm.
and have been exposed to all these different counseling theories and all this other garbage, years and years of garbage, 4 years of undergraduate school, another 4 years of graduate school, and then all this in-service training stuff with all these counseling theories. None of it works like Mace does.
Yeah.
It's all garbage compared to this.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, this should be, if I had my way, 90% of psychiatry should be cut out and this should take its place. Now, psychiatry does have its place. I'm not
Is it
saying that.
okay?
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a role for them.
Mm.
I mean, I've watched patients that were just totally crazy, you know, after they took their drugs, they were manageable. They were coherent again for
Mm.
a while. You know, there's some that the change was absolutely amazing. They were actually normal for a period of time until they stopped taking their meds. You know, there's people in the prison that are so violent and psychotic that without those meds, they would be dangerous to anybody they came across. You know, there's peoples that I would not have been able to reach if they weren't on meds. They would have been too far out. You know, so there is a place for these things,
Mm.
but right now that place is way oversteps the bounds of where it should be.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're getting them hooked on it, as you said earlier,
They're getting them hooked on it.
That's it.
You get on Wellbutrin and you try to get off it. It's almost as bad as trying to quit nicotine or trying to quit
Oh, yeah.
heroin or something. I mean, they get you hooked on these craps, and then you're stuck.
Mm.
You know, Wellbutrin withdrawal is awful.
Yeah. Okay. Should we do a bit? I've got a bit of a quick fire one because I've been writing these down. And some of these might go on too long, but if there's a way of answering them fairly quickly, I think would be good. So, um, it's not just limited to schizophrenia. We're saying any mental health issue is coming from those entities.
Well, yeah, you can look at it that way because they're the ones putting negative thoughts in your head.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you go, where do thoughts come from? Nobody's ever found a thought in a human brain.
Yeah.
You know, they're coming from outside. You know,
Yeah.
these things know every rotten thing that you've ever done.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if you have something in there that's buried, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I did this rotten thing and I feel awful about it. They know about that. They'll bring it back up and throw it in your face.
I have that when I even like something that happened at school like 30 years ago, I'll go, oh, that was a bit cringy what I said to that girl.
Hmm.
Like what a wuss I was, when I said to
Yep.
this girl,
Yep.
I know I'm not as good looking as this guy, but like it's just so pathetic. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I still get like the shivers from it, like thinking about it now. Like, why?
Yep.
It's
See,
just so gone.
Mace would get rid of that. It'd be gone. You'd remember that you did that,
Yeah.
you know, but you wouldn't it wouldn't have any emotional charge to you.
Yeah, it's the emotional charge. I know exactly what you mean with that.
Right.
Yeah. You see it clearly objectively, but you don't have that. Yeah, there's no charge and no
Right. There's no
emotion
charge
to
to
it.
it.
Yeah.
It drains that charge.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
so
okay, I've got other ones. Also, I was going to say when you see homeless people walking down the street and they're talking to themselves, they may be on drugs. It's that thing, is it? They've got that entity talking
that's
to
the
them.
voices talking to them. You
Yeah.
know, they're arguing with them. Um, there was the one patient where she was walking off the hospital grounds
Yeah.
and arguing with her voices all the way, saying, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I shouldn't leave the hospital." And
Uh,
they're arguing as she's walking off the hospital grounds.
Yeah.
And a lot of these court things where they come up and the guy pleads insanity and he goes,
Mm.
I didn't kill this person. The voices did.
Yeah.
The voices made me do it. It's just like the devil made me do it.
So does that mean that would you say that that person's then innocent because they're the victim of the voices, or would you still say they should go, they need to be punished?
Well, punishment doesn't help at all.
If they
You know,
kill, let's say they kill like a whole family, they kill 50 people.
well, they should be locked up because they're dangerous.
Yeah.
You know,
But are
you
they
can't.
guilty? But locked up in a prison or locked up in a like
Well,
a psych ward?
the original person who lived in that body before it was taken over is not guilty.
Yeah.
You know, the entities have taken over the person's mind, I guess you would
Yeah.
take it. You know, they're the ones who were running the show. They're the ones who were driving that murder.
Yeah. So
So
they are victims in a way. I mean, I just had a guest on. He was actually mind controlled, and his mind was shattered to create alters. I don't know if you may have gone into this subject or not. I don't know, but and they implanted certain tasks for him to do, and he became an assassin. And there's like an amnesiac barrier around these altars that they create. And he was programmed through hypnosis and through trauma. Like he was given an electric shock to shock him, and so he would forget. And then there were program stuff in with hypnotic words such as "You're going over the rainbow now. You're coming to a door." And so he'd be taught stuff like that, and then he would kill people, and then he wouldn't even remember he did it. Now
yeah,
I'm just wondering if that's connected, and if in those
yes,
altars, within those
yes,
altars, there's actually an entity that or demonic entity that controls those altars, maybe.
yeah. And if you talk to most of these schizophrenics, they don't remember. Just remember, that guy with the
No.
pistol who went into the trance.
Yeah.
They don't remember killing anybody.
Right.
It, for
Yeah. Yeah.
honest, they don't remember doing it. They were being controlled. It's just like the guy who with the pistol who fired the pistol and he woke up and go,
Yeah. Yeah.
what am I doing? Now there is another side to this. When working in the emergency rooms, so I spent 10 years doing psych crisis in the emergency rooms, and I saw stuff in there. People who attempted to kill themselves
Yeah.
that should not have survived. I mean, there was no way they should have survived what they did.
Yeah.
You know, so there is an angelic side too. Remember, I said, okay, you got one side are demons,
Yeah.
the other side are angels. There's this one woman. Um, she everything was going wrong for her. She was divorced. She'd lost her job. Her kid was out of control. She
Yeah.
didn't have any money. Everything was going wrong. So she decided, I'm done. I'm done. I'm gonna go to the. Uh, she didn't want to do it in her apartment because her kid was there. She goes, I'm gonna go out to the railroad track at this small town, outside of the city. And she waited at a railroad track. She got all drugged up and drunked up. She's waiting at the track for the train to come by. So she's calling her sister in San Diego, telling her goodbye. And then the train shows up. And as the train got closer, she drove around the barrier, stopped the car right in front of the train on the tracks. And the train smacked the car, picked it up, threw it into the next track. Okay. And then another train came from the other direction and hit it again. So here's this car being hit by two trains. It threw it yards off of the track, and it was so mangled, like a smashed soda can, she could not even get out of it. They had to cut her out. Okay? And I asked her, I said, what were you thinking
Mm.
after this happened? She said, I was furious I was still alive.
Oh.
She said, I was just absolutely furious. Um, she said, I didn't want to be alive. She said, then she kind of heard a voice that said everything is going to be okay, and she just had this very strong feeling that
Mm.
everything was fine. So a couple hours later, after they cut her out, here she is sitting in front of me in the emergency room, and I'm having to do a psych eval on her to see if she should be admitted
Mm.
for being psychotic, you know, after doing such a thing. And after talking to her, I didn't feel she was psychotic or any danger anymore. You know, the only thing that happened to her is she had a black eye. That was it.
Unbelievable.
That was it. A
Wow.
black eye. They had to cut her out of that car. So
That's
after
incredible.
talking to her for it was after talking to her for a while, I went, I don't believe this woman is psychotic or a
Yeah.
danger to herself at this point now. And I didn't think the psychiatrist who do the final review would allow her out.
Mm.
I was surprised when he did. That was just one. I mean, I got I had hundreds of these kinds of stories. I should have written them down, but it was you know,
Mm.
like lobsters used to be off of Maine. There were so many of them, they were just
Yeah.
common knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, I told you about the one with the gun. There
Mm.
was another guy with a 45. He had a 45 pistol. I mean, that would have made it would have just blown your head
Mm.
right off your
Mm.
shoulders.
Yeah.
So he cocked that gun, one round in the center, put it to his head, click, didn't go off. He went to the range the next day with that same gun, put that same round in, pulled the trigger, and it fired. Okay? There was another guy. This is another amazing one
Mm.
where he had all the cylinders loaded with bullets. And he said it was a 357 Magnum. That would have just blown
Yeah.
the head off his too.
Mm.
So he put it to his head and went click. Shot, put it to the ground. It went bang. Put it to his head again. Click. For the ground. Bang. He went, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds of things like that.
Wow.
You know, there was another force that was
There's a benevolent force. There's a
benevolent
benevolent
force
force.
that
Yeah.
stopped it,
Yeah.
stopped the whole thing. And it was time after time after time after time after time. I should have written those down. I didn't. I only
Mm.
have a handful that I remember, but they were common.
Yeah. It's almost as if these beings, whether they're negative or positive, are working in like the quantum reality whereby you have all the infinite amount of timelines going off, and they can pick the specific timeline that makes sure that that click, the trigger didn't work for that instance, and they're able to move you onto that track. It's like sliding doors, the movie, they're able to put you onto a specific timeline that avoids you getting killed in all those millions of timelines that got crushed by the train, let's say. There may be one that you like miraculously you don't get crushed. You're able to move you onto that timeline, those beings maybe. Because I know people have talked about in the demonic realm when they're worshipping, their demons, they're able to ask for certain things, and those things happen in the next day. So it's almost as if that like they're put onto that timeline where they're finding exactly the £500 they asked for in money, like on the side of the street. There's a timeline that exists where that money's there out of all the infinite timelines, and they're able to shift that person onto that timeline. I don't know if that's just a thought,
Well,
amusing.
that might explain it. But I know the feeling
Mm,
because I've been through a situation like that where there was no way I should have survived it. You know,
yeah.
I was going for my commercial pilot's license in
Mm,
sailplanes,
mm,
gliders. They're no engine. Okay. So you only got one chance to land. If you blow that, you're screwed.
mm, mm.
You don't have any engine to go back up into the sky like a
Mm.
regular
Yeah.
plane. Okay. So the getting the commercial license was two-thirds harder than the private. I already had my private license. So we're practicing emergency landings. Okay. So this instructor I had, he had a big ego, and um, he would just what would happen is that the FAA examiner, the guy who gave the
Mm,
commercial test, had to drive from Phoenix to Tucson, which is about 200 miles,
mm.
and he didn't like that drive, and he especially didn't like the drive if the student failed the test.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
So his way to circumvent students failing the test,
Mm,
which I don't think he probably didn't get paid for,
mm,
was to embarrass the instructor if the student failed the test in front of the whole sailport,
mm,
in front of everybody there. Okay. So this instructor I had, he wasn't about to be embarrassed. So he just kept making things harder and harder and harder.
mhm,
Okay. So one day we're going out to, and basically I was practicing emergency landings. So what you had to do was stop that sailplane. Okay. So with the two passengers, it would weigh close to 1,000 pounds. You had to stop it in 250 feet. So what that meant is there was two fluorescent cones on the runway. Okay, and these were dirt runways.
Mm.
You had that plane had to be falling out of the air right at the first cone.
Mm.
And if you went an inch over the second cone, you failed.
Mm.
So the requirements were pretty stringent, which meant that you had to have very precise control over your altitude and airspeed as you're coming in for a landing. Very precise
Mm.
control. But there was one time I was coming in for a landing in a high performance ship, and I was maybe 50 feet off the ground, and I got caught in a downdraft, which was smashing me into the ground,
Mm.
you know, and there was no engine. So the only thing you could do, so that here's this downdraft pushing me into the ground. The only thing I could do to get out of it was to lose even more altitude by pushing the stick forward and lose even more altitude,
Mm.
which risked smashing into the ground. And I wasn't over the runway yet, you know. So I did that and just barely escaped smashing into the runway. I was almost in
Mm.
ground effect until I reached the runway. I didn't forget that.
Mm.
So on every landing after that, I carried maybe 25 or 50 extra feet of altitude, just in case.
Mm.
I wanted that because it was very easy to get rid of that altitude. I mean, we had dive brakes. You could pop those out. They would
Mm.
drop the plane. You could skid it and put the plane on its side, and it served as a giant air brake. It was very easy
Mm.
to lose altitude. It was very hard to get it back.
Yeah.
So we're walking out to the runway, and he goes, "You're going to fly from the back seat today." I said, "What do you mean I got to fly from the back seat? I can't see over your fat head.
Mm.
Your shoulders and your head are blocking the runway. I can't see the runway."
Mm.
He goes, "You're flying from the back seat." And I went, "God darn!" I was pissed. I was like, "I'm not going to be flying from the back seat when I take the commercial test. I'm going to be in the front seat.
Mm.
I can't see the freaking runway." So he goes, "You're flying from the back seat." So, okay, we get hauled into the air by another airplane, run the pattern. I'm on final approach. I'm carrying my 50 extra feet of altitude or 25 feet of altitude. I'm coming in on the approach, and I'm having to go back and forth, looking back around his head to see that cone. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
no, yeah, yeah, okay, no clear view. His shoulders and his head, and all
Mm.
I could see is around his head. So I'm bobbing back and forth to see that, and dropping, carrying my altitude. And he goes, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm high. I, I, I got it. I got this." He goes, "Let me have the plane." And now I'm furious. He's not only making me fly from the back seat where I can't see the
Mm.
freaking runway, now he's taking control of the aircraft, and it's illegal for me to say, "Hey, I got this." Why should I give it to you? Why should I
Mm.
give you control of the plane?
Yeah.
I can't do that. It's against
Mm.
FAA regulations. So I have to turn the plane over to him. Next thing I know, he stalls the friggin' plane. It's stalled. It's not flying, and we're like 75 feet above the ground, and we're not near the runway yet.
Mm.
You know, and I look at him, and he's just sitting there like tense. It's like, did he have a heart attack? Has he had a stroke? What's going on? And the dive brakes are full out. I mean, we're not flying, and the dive brakes are full out. With the dive brakes full out, we're not going to be flying. The plane will not fly anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on its way down. He's not doing anything,
Mm.
and it's getting lower and lower. And all of a sudden, I get this feeling like, calm down. Everything is going to be okay. Yeah, but I'm looking at this situation and I'm going,
No, it's not.
no, it's not. So I grab the dive brakes and I close them, which was illegal for me to do.
Mm.
You know, I closed them, locked the dive brakes. Now he's got a chance to fly the plane if he ever decides to take control of it.
Mm.
We're still heading for the ground at a 45-degree
Yeah.
angle, and now he's at like 50 feet above the ground, and we're still not near the runway. Now, I'd look out the window, and my window was open, so here's this big space there, and we flew through the top of a mesquite tree or a palo verde tree and broke off one of the branches. So I look out the window, and here's this branch whizzing by my head because the strut hit the top of the tree and just cut that branch, and it just went whizzing by.
Mm.
And I look outside, and we're not any longer lined up to the runway. We're coming in perpendicular to the runway.
Oh,
And I'm like going, how the hell did we get from lined up on a final approach to being perpendicular to the
yeah.
runway? I have no idea how that happened. But I look out the window, we're low now. We're like 30 feet above the
Mm,
ground and we're still not near the runway. And here's this barbed wire fence
mm,
in front of the runway. And even if we hit the runway, there's only 35 feet because we're not lined up with it. We're going to have to line crossways,
yeah.
the skinny way. And on the other side of the runway is a 3 foot ditch and a 3 foot berm.
Mm,
Okay. This plane was made out of fiberglass. If we
oh,
hit that, the guy in the front seat, his name was Jerry too. He's going to be dead.
yeah.
There's no doubt about it. He's going to be dead. And I'm probably going to be critically injured, if not dead,
Mm,
you know? So here comes this feeling like the closest thing I could do is like drinking, you know, 3 shots of whiskey. It's just like, whoa, this overwhelming feeling, knowledge. It was an overwhelming knowledge that everything is going to be okay. Just
mm.
sit back and watch the show. And I'm looking at the windshield. We'd already flown through a tree. We
Mm,
lost a lot of airspeed, clipping the
mm,
top of the tree. We're 30 feet above the ground, and here's this barbed wire fence in front of us that we have to clear before we can even
mm,
reach the runway. And if we don't clear that fence, that plexiglass canopy is just going to cut our heads off. I mean, you're not going to stop a 1,000 pound sailplane flying at 45 miles an hour, 50 miles an
mm,
hour with a piece of barbed wire fence.
mm.
And nor are you going to rip it out. It's going to just go through that canopy and cut our heads off. So this is what I'm facing now. And here's this feeling like everything's going to be okay. And knowing it was a knowing,
Yeah,
you
knowing
know,
this. Yeah.
knowing,
Mm,
absolutely knowing everything's going to be okay. And it's this thing telling me just sit back and watch the show. So I'm watching the show. I look out the windshield and here's this barbed wire fence coming up. And I'm like going, we're going to make it. I go to the other side. No, we're not. Yes, we are. And well, maybe. Like doing this, yet knowing that everything will be okay. And this barbed wire fence coming right at us. And I'm going, here's the logic, the reason going, uh-uh, you're not going to make it. He barely clears the barbed wire fence. Now I know this guy. I flew with him in Civil Air Patrol for years. He's
mm,
not that good a pilot to do what he's about to do. So what he did is he hit full right rudder. Okay, the whole plane instead of flying forward is now its wingtip is going forward. The side of the plane is completely against the flying in the motion in the direction we were going. It was like a giant air brake,
mm.
and the thing just drops out of the air from like 25 feet,
Yeah.
just drops straight down onto the runway. Now, you think the plane is going this way, the wing is going this way. So the whole plane is going this way. You think if it hit the runway,
Yeah.
it would hit and it would jam that wing into the ground and break the wing. That's not what happened. The thing fell straight down and it just balances. I mean, it should have went like this, should have went bam like that. It
Yeah.
didn't do that. It just fell straight down and then it just wavered. It just went like this for a little while, for a couple of
Mm.
seconds, and then it just gently dropped the wing onto the ground. Boom, and it was dead. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell just happened? We shouldn't have been alive. I mean, had we plowed into that berm, we would have been dead. So finally, he moves. He opens up the canopy. Neither one of us say a word. He gets out. I get out. We're looking at the plane. That wing should have been destroyed.
Mm.
The landing gear should have collapsed from a drop like that. We don't see anything. There's not a scratch. So we start walking around the plane in a big circle, okay, looking for damage. There's not a scratch on that plane. It should have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And I look at him and I go, Jerry, what happened? And he goes, I don't know.
Mm.
So you say, like I was telling you, that there are evil spirits and
Yeah.
there are guardian angels.
Yeah.
Now, the guardian angels, they can't help you unless you speak to them. You have to give them permission. They cannot come like the demons. They can't come in and just do what they want.
They're not
You have to give
invaders.
them
Yeah, you've got to
right.
invite them in. Yeah,
You have to invite them to help you.
yeah,
You have to
yeah.
talk to them to go help me,
Mm.
before they can, otherwise they got to sit there and watch these demons tear you up.
I guess because it's like, we live in free will, so that you have to ask for it, that kind of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I was
So
expecting that pilot to go, that's how you land a plane, you know.
he had no idea what happened. I have no idea how he talked his way out of that, because they thought I was doing it because I was a student. All these
Mm.
people rushing up. What happened? What happened? I don't know. I wasn't flying. I wasn't pilot in control. Ask him. I wish I knew what he said. I never heard his explanation for that. I wasn't at the hearing.
Right. We should reach out to him and get him to give you,
I don't know
tell
where he
us
is.
some. Oh, it's a shame.
I tried to track him down. He's no longer with Civil Air Patrol. He's no
Oh
longer
no.
flying at the airports. I don't know where he is now.
Incredible. What an incredible story. Yeah, and it really shows that there's good forces that create miracles, really. What we'd consider miracles.
Yeah, that was a miracle. And and every time I get where, well, I start thinking maybe there is no God. I mean, I think of that and it's like, boom,
Boom,
wake
yeah.
up, buddy,
Mm,
wake up.
yeah. I mean, loads of people do die in crashes as well, and some live. So it's difficult to say, you know, it can be quite arbitrary at the same time, can't it?
Yeah.
We must also say that. Jerry, thank you for your time. Very generous of your time today. Like and you're a legend. You could talk, I could listen to you all day. You've got so much to talk about, haven't you? It's such a huge body of work, and you've had so many experiences with this. I know you've got loads of different anecdotes you could have gone into as well, because I've watched some of your other interviews.
If it wasn't for guys like you helping me get this information out, I would be nothing.
Mm,
I'd be a voice screaming in the wilderness.
yeah,
It's you guys that are actually doing the heavy lifting. Because I don't have those kind of resources at my disposal. You guys provide them. So
mm.
I'm greatly indebted for you guys
That's my
um,
pleasure.
letting me come on and to get this stuff out to the world.
I call it courageous conversations that the mainstream are afraid to have. That's kind of the tagline for what I'm doing. But, I was just going to say, just to wrap up, is that this is like shamans have been doing this. I think you kind of touched on it earlier, but we're almost like this is what, in traditions they were doing. It was like shamanism like that. They would be communicating with spirits. I don't know if you've read some of the Carlos
Yeah.
Castaneda books and stuff like that, but
Oh yeah, I've read them all
yeah, I
many
mean,
times
so
over.
so this has, or in certain traditions around the world, they are doing this sort of work, aren't they? With talking with
Yes.
entities and working with the spirit entities, the plant entities. I've done ayahuasca. I know some people have a funny kind of relationship with that, but maybe there's good and bad with that as well. And you've got to be quite strong within yourself to ward off the negative entities and only pull in the good entities. But this is shamanism, what we're talking about here, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It's like, you know, and the Native American tribes, they would take schizophrenics and they would mentor them and they would become shamans because they were in touch with the negative part of the spiritual world. So they're aware of it.
They're aware of it.
They know what it is. It's like Sherry Sweeney, my co-author of this book.
Yeah.
Okay. She was hearing voices when she was a young woman, you know, so she was aware of what they were. And she's
Mm.
probably not right now, she's one of the most spiritual people that I know.
Yeah.
You know, it I knew her for this is how bad the stigma is with mental
Mm.
illness. I knew her for 10 years before she told me that she heard voices when she was a young woman. And I couldn't believe it
Mm.
because like I said, she's one of the most spiritual people I know. And when I heard that, I just started hammering her with questions, and only questions that somebody who heard voices could answer.
Mm.
And she was like, bam, 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 right there. You know, so she co-authored this book with me. So
Mm.
she had her personal experience with these things, and her one of her greatest contributions is the That's a Lie program because these voices, even in normal life, 98% of what they say are lies.
Mm.
You know, So she said every negative thought that comes into your mind is put there by these negative entities. And 90% of what they say are lies. So if you respond to it with, that's a lie, they can't get you, they can't hook you.
Mm,
So you have to fight back. You have
mm.
to watch what's coming into your mind and know that not all your thoughts are yours.
Isn't there a danger if you fight back, you create a tension point which creates like a charge? Would it not be better to see it more like a dark cloud that's passing, and instead of like, because what you resist persists, is it not better to see as a dark cloud and just be aware of it and let it and just
Well,
observe it with your
no,
awareness and let
because
it pass?
that's what they would love if you did that. Oh yeah, just view us like a dark cloud, you
Mm.
know, and you view it like a dark cloud. They're still there. Nah, 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 nah. Dark cloud. It's not going to work.
No?
It's like somebody invades your country. What are you going to do? Go, oh yeah, that's bad. Yeah, you have to take a stand against these things.
I was just thinking, but would it not generate neurosis if you had a thought coming in and you're almost going, fuck
Well,
off, like,
no, no,
mm,
contrary, what it does
mm,
is when they found, see, when they first start going into a psychotic state, they
mm,
feel helpless. They feel totally helpless because they don't know what to do. They can't do anything. They take those
mm,
meds, they feel rotten and
yeah,
more. They're totally helpless. It's like, um, all who go here give up all hope, and they see that the meds aren't helping. But when they see they have some things they can fight back with, they start getting empowered. They're no longer helpless. They can hit back against these things,
yeah,
and if then they start, well, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. What the entities can't grab onto them if they don't believe what they're telling them.
yeah.
If they believe what they're telling them, they're going to become what they're telling them, and what they're telling them to become is a monster.
Mm,
That's why it's critical to note that not all thoughts that come into your mind belong to you,
mm,
especially none of the negative thoughts that come into your mind belong to you.
yeah. And can you just hold that book up again? I'm going to get ask the audience to buy this now. Um, so here's the book, everyone. It's called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. And, all for the price of, a beer. Well, in London anyway, something like that. Come on, guys, let's support these great thought leaders that we're bringing on, and we're having the absolute privilege and honor of speaking to. Grab a copy of the book. It will go a long way to Jerry. And the co-author is again?
Sherry Sweeney.
Sherry Sweeney. Yeah, this has been Raising the Bar, everyone. Yeah, you can see what we're trying to do here, bring on these incredible thought leaders like Jerry Marzinsky here. Please grab a copy of his book. Please support him. Your website is as well. Do you want to say it? I'll put it in the link, but do you want to say it as well?
It's jerrymarzinsky.com. That's Marzinsky.
There you go. Perfect. All right. Thanks everyone for watching.